Just what kind of a calamity was this? The TV station's situation room used to be enveloped in the celebratory mood, but now, everything felt somber and dreary like a funeral. The live broadcast showing up on the viewers' TVs suddenly got cut off with the entrance of a strange, winged ant monster. Understandably, they began flooding the station with phone calls of angry complaints and urgent inquiries. One of the employees walked over to the station's director and cautiously made his report. "Sir, our communication network is about to collapse from all the calls made by the irate viewers." The station's director raised his head. "So what? Are you suggesting that we should broadcast live the scenes of our hunters getting ripped to shreds by a single ant monster?" The broadcast got cut off just as the hunters were getting one-sidedly beaten up by that mysterious ant monster. It was understandable that the curiosity of the viewers would skyrocket. However, that didn't mean they could broadcast the scenes of Hunter Ma Dong-wook getting tortured, nor the moment that Hunter Min Byung-gu got devoured. The director buried his face in his hands and let out a helpless moan. It's over. It's all over. The once-in-a-lifetime gamble where the fate of his station rode on was now going down the drain because of one DMN ant monster. Director, what now? Someone just appeared in the location out of nowhere. The director didn't bother to raise his head up and grimly replied, "Unless it's Jesus himself, don't report to me every little thing that happens over there." Got that? However, realizing that talking wouldn't get him anywhere, the producer increased the previously lowered volume up way higher. The situation room was immediately filled up with the screams of the ant monsters. The director quickly raised his head up out of sheer shock. The screen of the live feed monitor was reflected in the director's eyes. "Oh, dear Lord, Jesus Holy Christ." The director suddenly began calling out to Jesus, which he didn't even believe in, to begin with, and hurriedly shouted out to the rest of the employees. "What the hell are you all doing here? Why aren't getting ready to start broadcasting this?" "But, sir, if we start broadcasting again, we'll be showing the live feed instead. There won't be any delay in the transmission, and everything will be shown in real time, sir. It's all or nothing." "Pardon me, we've already stopped broadcasting midway. Anyway, things won't get any worse than it already has." "Well, I guess so." A hunter's sudden appearance was caught on the camera. No one could tell whether he was a Korean or a Japanese. Heck, it was unknown if he was a hunter at all. But with his appearance, the director's gamble that seemed to be over for good suddenly gained one last shot at the glory. The director issued a new order with a determined expression firmly etched on his face. "Switch it on. Switch it on, now." 1 year before the Korea-Japan United Raid team came knocking on the island, the Ant Queen began thinking, "We must leave this island." Other lifeforms that should have served as their food source had all disappeared from the island, and the incidents of its children devouring each other occurred frequently now. There was no source of food on this island to sustain the citizens of the queendom now that its population had swelled up to several thousand strong. This cannot continue. Abandon the existing nation and seek out a fertile land overflowing with other lifeforms to establish a new one. If the domination of the island was the queen's first task, then this problem would be its second one. However, the queen remembered. It remembered all the powerful invaders that stepped on the island several times before. The queen's forces managed to repel them, but the nation had to suffer great losses as well. Far too many of the queen's children had to be sacrificed. Would its children be able to defeat those beings if they went to another land? Needs stronger soldiers. It needed a single most powerful soldier to lead the citizens of the nation. And so, the queen decided upon the direction of their evolution. Half a year later, by gathering the magic power it already possessed, as well as all the nutrients it had amply absorbed before, the queen gave birth to a brand new life. It was the greatest combat weapon imaginable, born solely for the sake of dealing with the strong humans. The queen's determination to create the most powerful soldier there was, combined with the original order of killing all humans it heard in its head, created a horrifying monster that simply exceeded all common sense. The monster was born with the skill, gluttony. By consuming its opponents, this new monster could turn their magic energy as well as a portion of their knowledge into its own. "I want to become stronger." The monster realized what its powers were early on and began devouring its own kin. But the queen left it alone. What this monster wanted was the same as the queen's desire, after all. The queen was greatly happy as he grew stronger and stronger day by day. It was happy because he had already exceeded the power of his mother now, and without encountering a single hitch, the army he would lead was getting closer to completion as well. That was why. Just a little more time. In the midst of that, the human invaders entered this land once more. Their numbers were lower this time, but they were far stronger than before. However, the queen laughed at them. In preparation of the ants waging war against humanity in another land, this should serve as a great opportunity to test out the powers of him. The queen, as usual, sent out all of the soldiers guarding its castle along with him. Just as the queen desired so, he went out and completed the first mission he was given. But when he returned, the queen was already dead. He was enraged, and thankfully, there were enough strong humans left on this island that would serve as the outlet for his rage. First of all, the king of the humans was killed, and then it systematically annihilated all the subordinates next to the dead king. One of the subordinates cried out before he got killed off. He asked just what the hell he was. After devouring humans through the skill gluttony, he now possessed the ability to reason. He then began thinking to itself, what am I? Up until that point, he was a soldier of the queen. But now, with the queen's death at the hands of the humans, what should he call itself now? A sole existence that must lead the remaining soldiers of the queendom. He only knew one word to denote such an existence. King. He had killed off the enemy king already, so he had definitely satisfied the requirement to become one now. The Ant King bit onto the head of the remaining human. But then, suddenly, the Ant King's head swiveled in the direction of the Ant Castle. There was an enormous aura rushing out like a fierce storm from where the queen used to live. That level of power couldn't have come from a common foot soldier. A king, immediately sensing that an enemy that could threaten itself had appeared. The Ant King slowly rose up towards the Ant Castle. If there was one thing he was a bit regretful about, then that would be Dad, his father, who looked after the cameraman all alone after they lost his mother to cancer. Thinking that he'd not get to see his father again, he felt a deep pain in his heart. His shoulder was bitten, yet he couldn't feel a thing. His arm had stopped moving a long time ago. He was originally a tanker, so he was able to endure somehow, but this really was his limit. Plop, he knelt down on the ground. Even then, his head was filled with the thoughts of his father. Why did my last conversation with Dad have to be me asking him if he had his breakfast? If he knew this would happen, he might have talked for a lot longer. On that day, when Dad came for a visit to Seoul, I should have cleared up all of my schedule. However, time was a ruthless, unrelenting beastard and regret always arrived one step too late. The cameraman raised his head. The horrifying fangs of the ant monster were nearing his head. He no longer had any magic energy left to activate the fortification skill, so he wouldn't be able to defend against the monster's attacks now. Accompanying the noise of the outer shell being crushed, the bodily fluid of an ant got splashed on the cameraman's face. A blade emitting a cold, silvery gleam had cleanly stabbed through the ant's head. The cameraman raised his head and followed the blade, only to find another ant with a long red-colored plumage stuck to the top of its head standing there. Why is an ant attacking another ant? No, that thing wasn't an ant. The cameraman was mistaken because both were of the same black color. What he saw was an unknown soldier decked out in black armor from head to toe pulling his sword out from the head of the dead ant. Jin-Woo calmly scanned his surroundings. Last time he got to meet the members of the Korean raid team in the association's gymnasium. He had inserted one of the shadow soldiers in Baek Yun-ho's shadow, just in case. What a relief it was that he did that. It seemed that what he'd been watching wasn't a live broadcast, as the situation here was far worse than the stuff shown on the TV screen before it got cut off. He managed to save the weakest of the lot, the cameraman, first, but the other rank S hunters were still surrounded by countless ant monsters. What should I do now? The quickest way to deal with this situation would be to summon Fangs out and sweep these pesky ants away in one go with his trademark Pillar of Flames. But if Jin-Woo did that, he couldn't guarantee the safety of the rank S hunters. So, he needed another solution here. Jin-Woo quickly made his decision and turned his head towards Iron. Iron tapped his chest in a manly manner as if to say, "Leave it to me." He then strode forward, his large frame shaking to and fro, before opening his shoulders wide to roar out at the top of his lungs. The effect of that was rather amazing. The ants attacking the hunters all snapped their heads towards Iron's direction simultaneously, and soon they all rushed over. Nice work. Jin-Woo lightly tapped Iron on his back and summoned the 2 short swords he got as rewards after killing the Demon King. The Demon King's short sword. The pair of short swords with a blue tinge to their blades gleamed threateningly under the light magic's glare. When hundreds of ant monsters screeched out and pounced at the same time, his entire view was dyed jet black in an instant. Jin-Woo began gripping the hilts of the short swords even harder, and then he vanished from view. Soon, ants collided with the soldiers in a bloody battle to the finish. In the meantime, Baek Yun-ho, whose status was still better than everyone else, managed to move the injured hunters to a safe corner. Thankfully, they were all still alive. The cameraman joined soon afterwards and helped Baek Yun-ho out. Because Jin-Woo, or more specifically, Jin-Woo's summoned creature, attracted the aggro of all the ants present here, he was able to safely finish this task. Ma Dong-wook was leaning against the wall, his breathing rough and irregular. He then grabbed the arm of Baek Yun-ho, who brought him here, and asked, "What's going on? Who's fighting?" Ma Dong-wook's eyes were unfocused. His eyes were injured and he couldn't see properly. Baek Yun-ho placed his hand on Ma Dong-wook's hand. "Instructor Ma, it's fine now. Everything will be fine." He then shifted his gaze over to Jin-Woo. Other people may not have known it yet, but Baek Yun-ho had a rough idea already on how powerful Seong Jin-Woo was in reality. Baek Yun-ho might have been greatly flustered when the black soldier suddenly vanished, only to be replaced by the youth. But he still ended up shouting out loud even before he consciously realized it. He said, "Please, help us." And then, after seeing the youth move towards the ants along with his summoned black soldiers, the sense of relief washed over Baek Yun-ho, so much so that he nearly plopped down to the ground. Sure enough, Seong Jin-Woo proceeded to massacre and annihilate the ants that gave him and his teammates so much trouble at a frightening pace, as if those creatures were nothing but broken toys to be played around with. "It'll be fine now." He wasn't saying that to Ma Dong-wook. No, he was telling that to himself. The hope of survival was rekindled in his heart. The aid from one Seong Jin-Woo was far more reliable and trustworthy than the 20+ rank S Japanese hunters combined. "Looks like there's no need for me to step up here." Baek Yun-ho formed a smile and sat down next to Ma Dong-wook. All he could do now was to sit down quietly like this and watch Hunter Seong Jin-Woo do his thing. "Should I increase my speed a bit more?" Glance. Jin-Woo sneaked a glance at the floor, and he immediately issued an order to the puffs of black smoke rising up from the corpses of the countless ants. "Rise up." The cameraman felt a creeping chill crawl all over his skin. Wow, what's the meaning of this? What was about to happen here? He was deep inside a cave where breezes shouldn't exist, yet this eerily chilly air inexplicably brushed past his back. Thick, heavy screams resounded out within the queen's chamber and countless black hands began shooting out from the ground. The hands grabbed the ground and began pulling themselves out. Ant monsters. At a casual glance, they looked like ant monsters, but then again, endless streams of black smokes were rising from their bodies. It was hard to tell whether these monsters were physical beings or made out of gases. Wouldn't one potentially get that sort of appearance if one carved out the statue of an ant monster using a block of black-colored dry ice? Several hundreds of such things rose up from the ground. Now, the number of his shadow soldiers easily overwhelmed the surviving ant monsters. With things like this, looks like I won't have to personally step out now. Jin-Woo stored the Demon King's short swords back to his inventory, and then issued the very first order to his new soldiers. Don't leave any one of them alive. Inside the office of the Hunter Association's president, Go-Gun Huey hurriedly lifted his hand off the crushed armrest. His private doctor sitting next to him turned to look at him. Association president. "It seems that I got overexcited just now." He unconsciously gripped too tight, and this happened. However, how could he not get excited by the scenes he was seeing right now? Indeed, watching Jin-Woo's performance playing out on the giant screen made his emotions well up without him even realizing it. If only his body permitted it, he'd have gone there to fight alongside, too. Getting overexcited is not good for your body, sir. Go-Gun Huey nodded his head. There was only one reason why he, as the association president, wasn't present in the Mission Control Center. Didn't matter whether this subjugation operation ended as a success or a failure. There was a potential risk that he'd strain his heart simply by being there. Even watching the broadcast like this carried enough risk, so the personal doctor had to set up a camp next to Go-Gun Huey. Jin-Ah was studying in her bedroom, but she heard those loud noises and hurriedly came out to the living room. "Mom, I'm sorry. That was too loud, wasn't it?" Jin-Ah shook her head. Mom had already lowered the volume of the TV until not much could be heard so she'd not interrupt her daughter's studies. Jin-Ah didn't feel like unduly burdening her any more than that. Besides all that, what's going on? Is the TV broken? Not sure. It just stopped working all of a sudden. Where's Appa? He's right, H. Mom turned around to look, only to gasp out in surprise. Oh my, where did he go? But he was here only about a second ago. Jin-Ah tilted her head and opened Jin-Woo's bedroom door. Appa, it wasn't even in the bathroom, either. Jin-Ah proceeded to scour the entirety of the apartment before turning around towards her mom. What were you watching together just now? The Jeju Island raid. Suddenly, Jin-Ah was overcome with a certain ominous foreboding. Now that she thought about it, the entire apartment building was bustling with loud noises ever since a little while ago. No way. Jin-Ah hurriedly ran back inside her room and switched on her phone. When she did, just as the vigorous, loud cheers exploded out from the floors above and below hers, Jin-Ah's eyes opened wider as she finally confirmed the scene playing out within her phone's screen. Appa, after utterly massacring every single ant monster found inside the Queen's chamber, Jin-Woo stored his soldiers back inside his shadow. Even now, ants that had been spread out to the rest of the island were scurrying back to the ant tunnel. He judged that his priority should be placed on guiding the hunters out of here to somewhere safe before more ants showed up. We have the injured here to worry about, too. Jin-Woo strode towards the hunters. Beside Baek-Yun-ho and the cameraman, the rest weren't in a good shape. Cha-Hien was still unconscious, and the 3 others had suffered some serious wounds, as well. Jin-Woo asked while looking around, "What about Min Byung-gu Hunter Nim?" Baek-Yun-ho shook his head with a hardened expression. Not saying anything else, Jin-Woo brought out the potions and began treating the hunters one by one. Since the potions would become useless once they leave his hands, he had to personally feed each of the hunters. After drinking the potions, hunters began regaining their consciousness. "What's this?" Im-Tae-jae quickly raised his upper torso up, touched all over his body, and spat out a gasp of amazement. "What the?" Both Choi Jong-in and Ma Dong-wook recovered from the numerous injuries on their bodies in no time. Choi Jong-in had no clue on what had transpired here, so as soon as he laid his eyes on Jin-Woo, he was taken aback rather greatly. "Mr. Seong Jin-Woo, what are you doing here? Let's talk after getting out of this place first." "Oh." Choi Jong-in took a look around and nodded his head. Finally, Cha-Hien, standing before her, a frown formed on Jin-Woo's face. Something's not right. Her aura's far too weak. While feeling a sense of foreboding, Jin-Woo raised her head and cautiously poured the potion down her mouth. Sure enough, a message quickly popped up in his view. Jin-Woo's expression crumpled. When he slowly pulled out his hand supporting her head, it was soaked in her blood. That ant beastard. That creature inflicted a fatal blow to the strongest person among the Korean hunters, Cha-Hien, with nothing but a single blow. The sole reason why these hunters were still alive wasn't that they were strong. On the contrary, that beastard simply toyed with them for a little while, that was all. Jin-Woo's expression hardened. "In any case, I gotta." Cha-Hien's injuries took priority. If her wounds couldn't be healed by the potions, then she needed to get out of this island as soon as possible and get a healer-type hunter to heal her, a SAP. "Let's hurry." As they were preparing to leave the Ant Queen's chamber, Jin-Woo walking in front of the pack suddenly spat out a long sigh. Baek-Yun-ho could guess the reason why. "Ah, so that's the one." Jin-Woo instantly recognized the Ant King. And likewise, the Ant King recognized Jin-Woo as well. Taking its time, the Ant King slowly walked over to him. "A human. You seem to possess a pretty strong aura." It even imitated Goto Ryuji's speech pattern. Hunters immediately recalled the nightmare of a few moments ago, and flinched grandly as soon as spotting that ant monster. On the other hand, Jin-Woo showed no outward ripples and simply stared at the creature without saying a word. Eventually, the Ant King stood before Jin-Woo. "Are you the king of humans?" "Huh? An insect that knows how to speak." "Well, I'll be." When Jin-Woo replied with a less than impressed expression on his face, the Ant King's own expression crumpled unsightly. The power the Queen bestowed it with, and the power it gathered through the gluttony skill, the moment the Ant King unleashed all of its magic energy, its body suddenly ballooned up greatly in size. Its height, which used to be around the same as Jin-Woo's, grew by at least 1.5 times taller. The Ant King then screeched out loudly right in front of Jin-Woo's nose. Jin-Woo didn't even blink once, and instead, a smirk formed on his lips. "Yup, now you're acting properly like an insect." And then, he himself unleashed his own magical energy. All communications with Goto and his team have been cut off. The association president Matsumoto Shige's complexion became ashen. "Would you like to hear the last communication, sir?" "An ant. You seem to possess a pretty strong aura." "You are the king?" "That's right, I'm the king. Goto-san." "Beep. That's where the communication ends, sir. An ant monster using a human language. And Goto Ryuji was killed by that thing." Such an eventuality was not within his calculations. He and his compatriots had definitely planned everything out and made preparations for every eventuality, so why? Where is the monster that? No, where is the talking monster right now? He couldn't bring himself to say the words "the monster that killed Goto Ryuji." "It's disappeared, sir." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "It was a creature capable of killing Goto Ryuji. So, how could the satellite equipped with the magic energy detection camera keeping a close eye on Jeju Island not pick up on such a powerful monster?" The employee seemed to have figured out what his boss was about to say, and he pointed at the monitor once more. "We found it. The beastard has reappeared again." Matsumoto Shige's eyes shot open wider. "Where is the creature?" "It's inside the Ant Queen's chamber, sir." Only the ants returning to the ant tunnel, as well as the Korean hunters facing off against them, remained in that place. They must be fighting with everything they had, but unfortunately, their opponent this time easily exceeded everyone's imaginations. In the end, even the Koreans will be finished for good. That's what he believed. But then, Matsumoto Shige's brows shot up instantly. There was another spot of light that suddenly appeared right next to that horrifying monster. That spot of light was as big and bright as the monsters. No, maybe it was even bigger than that. The Korean team's broadcasts. Bring that up to the main monitor. When he shouted out, the super large screen in the middle of the Japanese Mission Control Center was immediately filled with the image of a certain young man having a stare down with an ant monster. That man is the source of that massive light spot. And then, the giant ant monster standing in front of that man. That thing was at least over 1.5 times larger than regular ant monsters. They were only looking at the thing through the monitor, yet the sheer pressure emanating from that thing managed to quicken their heartbeats. The ant monster made its move. The Ant King's fist powerfully slammed into Jin-Woo's face. Slam. Jin-Woo's back nearly bent backwards, but he stomped down and withstood the hit. The Ant King had struck with all of its might behind that punch, so it couldn't help but get taken by surprise. You can withstand my power. The Ant King struck out with a simple plan to kill this puny human in one hit. But instead of sending him flying away, the whole thing simply ended with his head turning slightly away. Too bad, there was no time to remain surprised, because Jin-Woo's own fist flew in afterwards. Swish. The Ant King was smacked right in the middle of its face, and it flew away to crash into the wall on the far side of the cavern. Kaboom. As if a meteor had collided there, the wall caved in deeply. Although it was only for a short while, the impact force was powerful enough to shake the entire ant tunnel. What kind of an ant talks this much? When the live broadcast got suddenly cut off, and the static screen showing the message of about the station encountering technical difficulty appeared on their TV screens, countless viewers were left devastated and stunned by what they saw. The hunters. What's happening to the hunters? What was up with that ant just now? What the hell? How can you cut the broadcast off right there? The scenes of an ant monster suddenly appearing without warning, and then it proceeding to systematically dismantle the hunters one by one. The viewers celebrating after the death of the Ant Queen felt like a bucket of cold water was poured down on them by that horrifying scene. Not too long afterwards, the static screen with the technical difficulty message went away and the MC appeared there instead. Everyone, this news just came in. With a sorrowful voice, he relayed the death of Hunter Min Byung-gu, and he also added that the safety of the hunters remaining in the ant tunnel couldn't be guaranteed, either. God damn it. They got the Ant Queen, so why are they dying now? What about Japan? Isn't it supposed to be a united team or something? Weirdly enough, the audience rating actually rose up higher than ever before, even though the raid broadcast had been cut off for a while now. The MC's expression brightened considerably after receiving an urgent message. I just heard the news that an unknown hunter has appeared on the scene right at this moment. We will immediately recommence with the broadcast right away. Those words were more than enough to inject much-needed vitality into the fatigued eyes of the viewers staying put in front of their TV screens. Soon, the live feed was restored, and what the heck? The viewers were greeted by the black soldiers filling up their TV screens, and they all shot up from their seats. They then saw those black soldiers fighting tooth and nail against the waves upon waves of ants flooding into the Ant Queen's chamber. The camera moved around to take in the unfolding events, before locking onto a single young man. He was too far away and it was hard to see what he looked like. The armored soldiers are apparently the creatures summoned by that hunter on your screen. Also, I just heard that most of the hunters are alive and safe as well. The viewers watching on with nervous tension all cried out in elation from that news. Gulp. The cameraman suppressed his agitation and swallowed his dry saliva. The reactions of other hunters weren't all that different either. While everyone was staring at Jin-Woo with excited eyes, only Choi Jong-in began looking around in his vicinity, and he could see mountains of ant corpses. He initially thought that those were the result of the hunters working together while he was out cold. But now, having witnessed Jin-Woo's power, his thoughts had changed. Could it be? Mr. Xiang Jin-Woo alone was responsible for. After taking a rough count of the dead ants, Choi Jong-in's eyes began trembling non-stop. A beastly screech exploding out without warning caused his head to snap back. The Ant King extricated itself out of the wall and displayed its rage. The air within the Ant Queen's chamber was quivering noticeably. Jin-Woo stared at the Ant King with a genuine surprise. The damage he dealt was far less than he thought. Is it because of the exoskeleton? The black, tough shell covering the entirety of that beastard, whatever that thing was, it had already exceeded being a normal organic matter. In that case, he'd use brute force to shatter that shell. The thing that could break one's armor wasn't a sword or a spear. No, it was a hammer. Jin-Woo's shoulder and arm muscles expanded, thick veins bulging visibly on his skin. The air grew thicker and heavier as it descended all around him. Slam! The hunters watching from the sideline were all stupefied into silence. The shockwave from the collision of magic energy whenever Jin-Woo and the Ant King exchanged blows rocked the ant tunnel itself. It was so severe that these top-ranked hunters, renowned for their mastery over wielding their magic energy, felt their innards tumble. "Are you all right?" I'm fine." The cameraman was only a rank A, but he still tried his best to suppress the contents of his stomach from rising up. He was even experiencing vertigo, too. Even then, even as his complexion paled greatly, he could still maintain his smile, all because slam, slam, slam. How can a lone hunter do that against such a monster? Because he saw a ray of hope. Hunter Seong Jin-Woo might be getting wounded from that exchange, but the outer shell of the Ant King was definitely being broken as well. The Ant King quickly sensed the changes taking place on the body that it felt so proud of. Its outer skin, most likely tougher and hardier than any known metal on this planet, began developing cracks all over the place. On the other hand, the enemy was easily withstanding the Ant King's attacks. It can't be. An impossible hypothesis quickly entered the Ant King's head. I'm losing out on physical strength. Not only that, to a human less than half its size. But, right at that moment, it realized that the fresh wound on its waist from that powerful hit felt wrong. Even the sound coming from there was not too good to hear. The exoskeleton lacked pain receptors, so the Ant King had to divert its attention for the briefest of moments to confirm the status of its shell down there. The result was rather shocking to behold. It's cracked open. The small crack that was no more than just a nick had spread out to everywhere, and was growing larger and larger. It was the same thing as a warning sign, telling the creature that there wasn't a lot of time left. The Ant King quickly turned its head around. However, even if it was only for a brief moment, Jin-Woo wasn't some amateur who'd missed this golden opportunity. Kaboom! The king's face spun to its side. The Ant King staggered unsteadily for a second or two from the ridiculous impact force that ignored the Ant King's forged steel-like shell on its face. It managed to regain its balance before it took a step back, but by then, the follow-up punch was already closing in from below. The power this human possessed, it was indeed great. However, unlike this human, who only had his physical strength to fall back on, the Ant King possessed a variety of other powerful means at its disposal, such as, the Ant King's head snapped back down, and at the same time, it fired a poison needle out of its mouth. A tip coated in deadly poison attached to the tongue like tentacle shot out like a bullet. It was an unavoidable attack aimed at the enemy's face in this point-blank range. Swish! The human deftly tilted his head out of the way to dodge the needle, but a smile still crept up on the face of the Ant King as the result of its attack became clear. The needle still managed to scratch the human's cheek and left a small wound there. It's done. That alone was more than enough. Once, the Ant King devoured a sea snail and somewhat coincidentally, absorbed a skill called paralysis poison. One of the most fatal poisons secreted by the known lifeforms in this world had been transformed into an even more deadly substance within the Ant King's body after it became a concentrated mix that contained the magical energy of the host creature. It was indeed the worst poison imaginable, evolved forcibly by the skill, gluttony. You've really given me so much trouble, you human beastard. Even the slightest scratch would result in complete paralysis in one's nervous system within seconds. The victims would lose all sensations in their bodies and lose control of themselves. The only thing remaining would be to systematically destroy the resistance-less enemy. As if the poison was doing its thing, the human formed a flustered expression. This is the power of the true king. The Ant King smiled widely and smacked the human's face. However, the human raised his left hand and blocked it. The question of how he was still able to move lasted only for a second. The human's right fist flew in from the other side and struck the Ant King so hard that the monster was shoved down to the ground rather unceremoniously. For the first time ever, a pained yelp shot out from the king's mouth. Jin-Woo confirmed the system message popping up in his view as that familiar mechanical beep rang out. I was wondering why it was celebrating all alone. But is this why? Maybe that was the case because, for some reason, he could sense that the Ant King showed much more panic when he moved without a problem just now. What a mystifying thing this was. He wasn't talking about the all-powerful buff getting rid of the poison. No, but the fact that he could actually sense the insect-like monster's emotions. Before he had realized it, he could sense what other monsters were feeling about. Wait, was it from around the time I fought those high orcs? Back then, he thought that he was able to decipher what those creatures were feeling by looking at their facial expressions and their gestures. However, that ant monster wasn't even what you'd classify as a humanoid creature. Indeed, that thing had no other facial expressions other than crumpling it in anger. Is this because of my perception? Just as his stat values had all increased by so much lately, his perception stat also had increased by a lot, too. It was possible that some other unknown, hidden abilities to his stats were unlocked when they went past a certain threshold. However, now isn't the time to think about that, is it? Indeed, his priority lay with killing this thing and getting out of this place. Jin-Woo sprinted towards the Ant King, trying to push itself off from the ground. Just a little bit more now, he thought, like so, and closed the distance in the blink of an eye, before jumping up slightly in the air. And then, he kicked down. Qua-boom. However, the Ant King had already vanished from the spot. Only the poor ground caved in from the impact. Where did it go? It disappeared. While the other hunters hurriedly searched for the Ant King, Jin-Woo calmly looked above him. The monster was flying in the air using its wings. Well, I guess this is convenient. Jin-Woo smirked to himself. What with him being able to sense the monster's fluctuating emotions, searching for its presence had become a step easier now. The emotion of confusion felt had changed to fear, before it changed once more to happiness. The Ant King had changed its strategy now. If that human's speciality is his strength, then there's no need to face him head-on. The Ant King's true weapon was its speed. Even that foolish human who lied and said he was the king of humans couldn't even react to the Ant King's movements and lost his neck. From the onset, the reason why the creature wanted to use physical strength to suppress the human was a type of desire to show off its kingly powers. But, right now, the Ant King had decided to throw away that selfish reasoning and focus all of its being in this battle from now on. The enlarged body reverted back to its original size, while the claws in its hands grew even longer and sharper, like well-honed blades. Its claws. Jin-Woo studied the changes taking place in the Ant King and realized that the creature would change how it attacked from here onwards. 2 short swords he summoned from the inventory landed in Jin-Woo's hands. The airborne Ant King shot down towards Jin-Woo. Its speed was incomparable to only a minute ago. Jin-Woo focused his senses. Time slowed down, and every single movement the monster made entered his vision. In all honesty, Jin-Woo felt most confident when it came down to the contest of speed. He easily deflected the Ant King's claw slashing down from above with his short sword. The follow-up attacks from the Ant King landing on the ground, as well as from Jin-Woo spinning around, clashed violently. As they exchanged defense and defense countless times, the Ant King was now completely beset with unbridled shock. How can this be? The enemy was actually matching its speed. No, it wasn't only that. As the seconds ticked by, his movement speed was actually picking up, as if his muscles had finally loosened up sufficiently enough. How can such a... The Ant King had been pushed back during the contest of raw strength, and now it was also being gradually pushed back in the contest of speed, too. Compared to the Demon King Baron, this monster's strength, speed, and abilities fell some ways behind. No, maybe it was on the same level as the dead Demon King, or even exceeded it in some regards. Unfortunately, the current Jin-Woo wasn't the same as the Jin-Woo of back then. Indeed, he had stepped up into a far higher realm with the rewards he had received after completing the Demon's Castle dungeon. Here's the fruit of all my labors. Jin-Woo got to fully experience just how much his stats had grown through this particular opponent, along with the satisfaction derived from knowing that his stats had been greatly enhanced now. Even more stirring emotions welled up from deep inside his chest. When the Ant King took another step back, Jin-Woo took 2 steps forward. And then, vital spot targeting. Jin-Woo's skill stabbed straight into the Ant King's torso. The vital points targeting was a skill that inflicted additional damage if he had managed to stab the enemy's weak spots. With the monster's exoskeleton broken in several places, it was not an exaggeration to say that the creature's entire body was now the so-called weak spot. Violent Slash. Having unlocked a new skill, Jin-Woo promptly used it. It was then, his short swords immediately sought out all of the Ant King's openings and, literally in the blink of an eye, slashed out dozens of times. The Ant King screamed out. As the creature writhed around in pain, Jin-Woo swung his short sword once more and sliced off its arm. The monster's long, black-colored arm fell to the ground with a dull thud. By now, the Ant King lost all semblance of pride or desire for revenge, and hurriedly fled to the air. Its instinctive desire to survive overruled everything. Unfortunately for it, Jin-Woo didn't allow for one moment of respite. I need to come up with something to overwhelm the enemy. Physical strength, speed, and even its hidden trump card, poison, all failed to work. It couldn't come up with anything. Did it not possess anything that was better than what that human possessed? Just before the despair set in, the Ant King finally arrived at the right answer. It recalled the one thing that it held an advantage in over the enemy, and that would be the head count. There was only one enemy, but the Ant King possessed thousands of soldiers. Indeed, didn't it have brave warriors waiting for its orders by the entrance of the chamber right this moment? The Ant King staggered back to its feet before pointing at Jin-Woo with its one remaining arm. As if they were waiting for that rage-filled screech, the waves upon waves of ants began flooding into the chamber. "Take this, human," the king continued to screech out. It was to restore its crushed pride, and also to rouse the fighting spirit of its countless soldiers as well. And so, as it confidently glared at the impudent human, from that side, a black wave was rushing out now. "Go." Jin-Woo issued an order to his shadow soldiers. The sovereign's territory he had activated prior to the battle was still active. The shadow soldiers, enhanced a step further by this skill, marched towards the ants at a frightening speed. The loud footsteps reverberated throughout the ant tunnel. And then, "You come out, too." Finally, Jin-Woo summoned Fangs out, as well. As if it was feeling sheepish for being summoned all alone, Fangs looked around himself and scratched the back of his head. Jin-Woo handed over the bead of avarice and warned him in no uncertain terms. "Aim only at the ants. Only at them. If even a single lick of flames land on the humans sitting over there, I will never summon you out ever again." Fangs enthusiastically nodded his head as if he was confident of doing exactly that. Soon, Fangs grew super large with the song of the giant and spewed out that enormous pillar of flames. Although he had seen that plenty enough times by now, Jin-Woo couldn't help but feel impressed by the sight regardless. It's kinda like his flame pillar is getting bigger every day, isn't it? Was it because his level was also rising up? Only Jin-Woo could come up with such a reaction since he had seen this spectacle before. But well, other people were thinking of entirely different things. The hunters hiding in the far corner holding their breaths while witnessing the battle between Jin-Woo and the Ant King could only gasp out in pure astonishment at the emergence of this new monster. A rather severe reaction also came out from their midst, too. That is his summoned creature. "What? That's a summon." Jayu pointed at Fangs and raised his voice. As for the other hunters, no one could respond to him as their jaws were still resting on the ground at that moment. However, everyone was thinking of roughly the same thing. How could that thing be classified as a mere summon? From the way it looked, or the powers it possessed, that thing no longer looked like a simple summoned creature, but a demon king that had descended to this earth. Whatever the case may have been, that totally nonsensical pillar of flames roasted the swarm of ants like there was no tomorrow. The Ant King began shuddering once more. These are that human soldiers. Less than 1 minute later, hundreds of the Ant King's soldiers were evaporated into ash and dust. It wasn't some metaphor, either. The ant monsters coming into contact with that strange pillar of flames really did evaporate where they stood. For the first time ever, the Ant King felt true terror towards another being for the first time in its life. It also sensed an unscalable wall. The Ant King finally learned that there was an enemy that couldn't be overcome, regardless of what power it tried to use. This was a complete defeat in every sense of the word. But how could such a thing be? It was born to fight against the strong humans, so why? That was its sole calling. It hurried with its growth for that purpose. It even absorbed humans' powers in order to facilitate that goal. But to think, it still couldn't win against this one human. The Ant King began shivering and turned around to run. It just had to run away far, far away from this human. At least in this very moment, the thoughts of its glorious kingdom and its soldiers had completely disappeared from the Ant King's head. Using the healing skill taken from one of the dead humans, the Ant King quickly regenerated its lost wing and took to the air again, even if it's only a little bit further away. But it happened then. Out of the blue, a powerful force pushed it down and planted the Ant King flat on the ground. It spat out a mouthful of bodily fluid. Having utilized the skill ruler's reach like a fly swatter, Jin-Woo quickly walked over to where the downed Ant King was. I can't let this guy escape, obviously. It was a strong monster. He wanted to turn it into his shadow soldier no matter what. But in order to do that, killing it comes first. After discovering Jin-Woo approaching it, the look of sheer terror filled up on the face of the Ant King, so much so that the creature looked almost pitiful to the onlookers. In the end, the Ant King began crawling on the ground to get away from him. That arrogant, dignified appearance it displayed back when it proceeded to toy around with the Korean hunters, it was now long, long gone. Now you look like a proper insect. Jin-Woo closed in quickly, took aim at the back of the Ant King, and activated his skill, Vital Points Targeting, No Violent Slash. That brought up the message window. Jin-Woo clenched his fist, but his celebrations lasted only for a short while. Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. He quickly turned around after Baek-yeon-ho called out to him, and found the latter's complexion to be extremely poor. Jin-Woo quickly ran over to him. Hunter Cha-hyun is. Just as his unfinished sentence implied, Cha-hyun's vitality had declined so much that it was hard to even sense it now. The situation had deteriorated even further than before. Jin-Woo's expression quickly hardened. Time had almost run out. Even if he rode on Kaisel, just when would he arrive in his destination, and just how long would he take to find a healer to heal her? I need another way. After some brief pondering, Jin-Woo came up with a method to save Cha-hyun. He finished checking her complexion and stood back up. He then turned towards the cameraman. Can you switch off the camera for a minute or two? The cameraman couldn't come to a decision here. Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was indeed his savior. He'd gladly heed that man's request, especially when he was also saving the lives of others here, too. However, to ask me to switch the camera off, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that every South Korean citizen must be watching this broadcast right now. If you don't, I'll just break it. Hearing Jin-Woo's icy tone of voice, the cameraman flinched grandly. If Hunter Seong Jin-Woo decided to break the camera, then would the combined efforts of the hunters present here even be enough to stop him? The why no longer mattered, as he was left with no choice in the matter anymore. I understand. Hold on. The cameraman removed the head-mounted camera and switched the device off. After confirming the power light of the camera was gone, Jin-Woo took Cha-hyun back from Baek-yeon-ho. I didn't want to scare the cameraman, but it couldn't be helped if he wanted to save Cha-hyun. Discovering something rather unexpected, the cameraman was the first one to gasp out in surprise. Other hunters also let a stunned gasp to leak out from their mouths, because the cold, headless body of Min Byung-gu was there. It was a gruesome sight to behold, where there was literally nothing above his neck area. The black smokes were rising up from the corpse, meaning it was possible to perform the shadow extraction on it. And, sure enough, the familiar mechanical beep in the system's message informed him in such a friendly way that what he wanted to do was, well, doable. Jin-Woo formed a solemn expression and issued an order to the shadow. Rise up. However, the end result was different from what he expected. Confusion and anxiety began entering Jin-Woo's expression. Was this because the skill level was too low compared to the target stat values? Or was it because he wasn't really feeling it with this particular shadow extraction? Jin-Woo quickly shook off all distracting thoughts, and then spoke up once more, his voice now containing his will. Rise up. The desirable changes took place then. A low, heavy sound that could be described as either a victorious roar or a scream resounded out from the distance somewhere, and an eerie wind suddenly swept past everyone. The eyes of the hunters were shot open in shock as the creeping chill crawled down their spines. Oh my god, that isn't that. From Min Byung-gu's shadow, a black hand rose up. As if it didn't want to go back inside the shadow again, the black hand powerfully grabbed the ground, and then it began pulling itself out from the darkness. How can this be? Baek-yeon-ho felt as if his heart would explode from what he was seeing right now. Other people might not see it, but his eyes clearly captured everything. The moment a shadow was transformed into one of his soldiers, it would immediately form a mental link with Jin-Woo. They would know what their sovereign wanted from them. Without needing any further orders, Min Byung-gu's shadow knelt down and began casting healing magic on Cha-hyun. As soon as the warm rays of light escaped from the shadow soldier's hands, Cha-hyun's pale complexion began recovering gradually. He can summon creatures using the powers of the deceased. Wouldn't he become stronger and stronger as the battle becomes fiercer? What a scary ability this is. I don't even know what to say anymore. To these hunters, having bore witness to Jin-Woo's ability today, this revelation left different types of impressions. It was around then that Min Byung-gu's shadow stood back up. The treatment process must have been finished, because there was a hint of crimson color gently glowing on Hunter Cha-hyun's face. Jin-Woo guessed what kind of person Min Byung-gu must have been when he was still alive, from the gentle eyes of the shadow soldier looking back at him. Jin-Woo slowly took his hand away from the shoulder, and then, extraction cancellation. With a slight smile on his lips, he let the shadow return to the abyss. No matter what, he didn't possess the right to lord over this man as one of his soldiers, when Min Byung-gu even sacrificed his life to fight against the monster threats. Indeed, he thought that such an act was not fitting for a fallen hero. After they safely got out from the ant tunnel, they found a helicopter hovering in the air, having arrived in their location just now with an exquisite sense of timing. There they are. Hunters are coming out. Yes, well done. The helicopter carefully descended and landed on the ground after its occupants discovered the exact location of the hunters. The tired hunters entered the vehicle one by one until only 2 people remained. They were Jin-Woo and Baek-Yeon-ho. What are you doing? Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. I still have some unfinished business to take care of on this island. Hearing that, Baek-Yeon-ho could only smirk softly. There were still plenty of ant monsters that had escaped death roaming around on the Jeju island. If some other people said that they wanted to remain here, then Baek-Yeon-ho would have questioned their sanity. But the man in front of his eyes was definitely not included in that group. To fight monsters, you needed a monster. Baek-Yeon-ho thought that he wouldn't get surprised anymore regardless of what Jin-Woo was planning to do on this island. And so, the 6 warriors and 1 cameraman who had bravely fought on finally left the island of Jeju. Their fight was over. However, it was merely another beginning for Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo formed a deep smile and summoned Kaisel out. The eastern United States. The video clip finally finished playing on the phone. The footage of a raid taking place in a small nation to the Far East left a pretty hefty mental shock to David Brennan, the director of America's Hunter Bureau. What do you think? The deputy director cautiously asked his boss, and the director was quick with his reply. Never mind what I think. Aren't you here in these early hours because you already know what I'm about to say? Am I right? That was indeed true. It was already an uncommon occurrence for the director of the mighty Hunter Bureau and his deputy to have a meeting at 4 in the morning. But then, their meeting place also happened to be the kitchen of the director's private residence as well. Exactly 3 cigarettes later, the director quietly opened his mouth. What a waste of talent to be confined in a small country like South Korea. I agree. What do we know about him? The deputy director readily brought out a file containing all the pertinent information related to Seong Jin-Woo. The director scanned the files and formed a satisfied smile. Very good. It had been less than an hour since the raid came to an end on the island of Jeju in the country far east. Yet the related data was already in his hands. Not only that, the file contained everything from that hunter's type as well as his close associates and relatives, too. Now, this was the power of the United States, the hunter superpower in the world, the Seong Il-Hwan incident. An existence that could either be a human or a monster in disguise exited from a dungeon and claimed that he was a Korean hunter. The data compiled back then still remained in the database of the Hunter Bureau. In the current situation where no other nation even knew what his name was, with the exception of South Korea, of course, the Americans were able to get 2 steps ahead of everyone else. God bless America. Indeed, if this wasn't the heavens helping them out, then what was? Taking away 2 rank S hunters from a single country. That'd be akin to declaring that we are turning our backs on that particular nation. South Korea and America had been allied nations for a very long time. What the director was implying here was that the impact of this matter would mushroom into something rather substantial in the near future. However, the deputy replied with a confident tone of voice. Even still, don't you think he's a talent worth all that trouble? Of course, the director couldn't deny that. So, he answered with a question instead. Can you do it? The deputy answered with the exact same words he used back during the Hwang Dong-Su's case. I'll do my best. Jin-Woo rode on the back of Kaisel to hunt down and kill every single ant monster his shadow soldiers missed the first time around. I must be pretty close to leveling up now. There weren't that many ants left to be found on the island. Jin-Woo really preferred that he'd get to level up by killing the remaining ants in this place. First of all, just a single level up would take him to level 100. For Jin-Woo, who loved to see numbers ending in the multiples of 5, 100 was such a fantastic level that he simply had to get there as soon as possible. Since he hadn't booked any gates, once he leaves Jeju Island he wouldn't have any other avenues to earn experience points for a while. He ended up recalling a painful memory while trying to extract Hunter Min Byung-gu's shadow, the leader of the White Phantoms, Baruka. After failing 3 times to extract his shadow, Jin-Woo couldn't convert him into his shadow soldier. When he failed in his first attempt earlier in the day, his heart fell to the pit of his stomach, as the thoughts of am I going to have another episode like that filled his head. Well, I did manage somehow to succeed on my second try, but still, wasn't this the case of a burnt child fears fire? There was no guarantee that the same thing as Baruka wouldn't happen later when trying to extract the Ant King's shadow. That guy's stat values were so high that comparing Hunter Min Byung-gu to that monster was a time-wasting gesture. Even if it was by a small margin, Jin-Woo wanted to increase his odds of successfully extracting that guy's shadow by raising his level. He was sure that, although there was only 1 level difference, it would definitely help out his cause. Jin-Woo's expression brightened greatly as soon as he stepped inside the nursery area. There were countless eggs lining up the floor, pillars, and even the ceiling. Seeing that there were wiggling movements from underneath the semi-transparent shells, these things were definitely monsters, too. Not sure how much experience points I will get here, but then again, with this many monsters here, he was sure of making up for the lacking amount of experience points. Boom. Jin-Woo noticed that his boys were breaking out in buckets of sweat, and summoned the Demon King's longsword out from the inventory. Should I have a go with this one? Every time he moved this cool-looking blue-colored longsword, arcs of electricity crackled up from the blade itself. He had stored it inside the inventory after defeating the Demon King Baron back in the Demon's Castle. There was a reason why he brought this longsword out instead of his main weapons, the daggers, short swords. Because of the added magic attribute of the longsword. Swish. When Jin-Woo energetically swung the sword, lightning crackled boisterously all over the place and caused the blue-colored storm to kick up. Oh, a wide smile formed on Jin-Woo's face. Although he couldn't recreate the destructive might or the added stun effect as displayed by the Demon King, it was still more than enough to burn these ant eggs. That's for sure. Isn't it too wasteful to leave inside the inventory? Because he was already far too familiar with the daggers, he would probably never use this sword again in the near future. But still, he felt that this weapon was too good to be left forgotten inside his inventory. And so, just how long did he spend wrestling with these eggs? Eventually, he got to hear the familiar and very welcoming mechanical beep. Finally, Jin-Woo cried out in elation. Inwardly, of course, he immediately returned the Demon King's longsword back inside the inventory and headed straight to the Ant Queen's chamber, leaving the mop-up operation to his shadow soldiers. He found the mutated ant monster still lying dead on the same spot. Jin-Woo stood next to it. His heart was already pounding hard from his intense desire to turn this mutated ant into his shadow soldier. Jin-Woo's gaze shifted lower to the ground. Thicker and greatly more ominous black smoke compared to other monsters were oozing out of the mutated ant's corpse. Was this because the creature was so extraordinarily strong? So strong that Jin-Woo didn't even know who to compare it to. While thinking like that, he calmly extended his hands out towards the rising black smoke. Rise up. The surroundings became completely dark. He'd still be able to see around him thanks to his perception stat if there had been a sliver, a trace of light coming in from somewhere. But this all-encompassing darkness didn't even permit that. It must have been a second or two later. The darkness lingered on only for a briefest of brief moments before receding away, to reveal the mutated ant standing right in front of his eyes. Jin-Woo flinched grandly and took a step back. If it weren't for the system message saying shadow extraction was a success appearing almost at the same time, he might have lashed out while thinking that the ant had come back to life or some such. Phew, that surprised me. Jin-Woo spat out a sigh of relief. Now that he calmly took another look at the creature from a step away, it sure did look a bit different from when it was still alive. From its body, streams of black smoke were continuously rising up. So, this is that ant monster's shadow. He couldn't tell just how much of its original stats had changed, but at least, the ominous aura it gave off seemed to have gone up a few levels. Jin-Woo stood before the ant's shadow. He could clearly feel its enormous magic energy reserve. The mutated ant becoming his soldier finally felt real to him now that he could stand right before the creature and sense its magical energy like this. He wanted to remain calm, but the corners of his lips continued to curl upwards. His heart was pounding away madly like a child who got his hands on a toy he so badly wished to own. Soon, the shadow's information popped up in his view. Commander grade. Jin-Woo began clenching his fists tightly after confirming its grade. A new one just made its appearance, which could only mean this guy possessed the kind of power that was on another realm compared to his other soldiers. Well, that's obvious when considering its original abilities while it was still alive. Just the name of the new grade alone implied that this soldier was not your average, common soldier. This was the fruit of his labor for having worked so hard to own this shadow. It was then. The shadow knelt down after meeting his gaze with Jin-Woo's. Without a doubt, the absolute loyalty that affected all the other shadow soldiers also applied to this guy as well. Nice. Next stop, the Ant Queen. Jin-Woo formed a satisfied smile and turned around. But then, oh my king. Jin-Woo's steps came to an abrupt halt after he heard that voice coming from behind him. He never thought that he'd got scared that easily, but at least in this moment, he did feel like his heart had taken a nasty tumble down to the pit of his stomach. Please grant me a name. Although it sounded a little inarticulate, the ant's shadow was definitely speaking back to him. The helicopter containing the hunters headed straight back to the city of Seoul. The association president Go Gun-Huey had been anxiously waiting for their arrival, so when the helicopter landed on the landing pad located on the Hunters Association, he quickly went over personally, and opened the vehicle's door. How is Cha-hee and Hunter Nim's condition? The gazes of the hunters all shifted towards where Cha-hee-in was. She still hadn't recovered her consciousness yet, and was lying on top of a blanket laid out on the helicopter's floor. Two Ranka healers, waiting just outside the landing pad, hurriedly sprinted forward as soon as Go-gun Huey issued his order. But when they began checking out her condition, they exchanged puzzled glances with each other. What's going on? When Go-gun Huey asked them, they answered almost at the same time. She's not injured anywhere. She's perfectly normal. Just what transpired after the camera was turned off. Go-gun Huey tilted his head in confusion. They didn't have a healer over there, too. After all, their sole healer, Min Byung-gu, met with a grisly fate, didn't he? As Ma Dong-wook fell into a dilemma, wondering how he should go about explaining this situation, one of the healers hurriedly shouted out, "She's waking up." Everyone's attention was focused on her in an instant. Go-gun Huey carefully sat down near her head and asked her, Hunter Nim, can you hear me? Cha-hee-in slowly opened her eyes. Where? You're inside the helicopter. Currently, it's landed on the Hunters Association, and we are planning to escort you to the hospital very soon. A hospital? Cha-hee-in briefly looked around her before taking a deep breath. The scent of Hunter Seong Jin-Woo had permeated throughout her body. She stared at Go-gun Huey with unfocused eyes. Did Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim show up there? She was supposed to be unconscious all this time, so when she mentioned Seong Jin-Woo's name, other hunters were all inwardly taken by surprise. Instead of a verbal answer, Go-gun Huey slowly nodded his head. A thin smile formed on Cha-hee-in's face. I knew it. It wasn't a dream. Cha-hee-in had briefly woken up, but she fell back into a deep slumber again. How is it that you're able to talk? I just can. The ant's shadow kept answering Jin-Woo's questions, but regretfully, none of them were much of a help. The ant monster could talk as a shadow because it knew how to talk when it was still alive. Could that be it? No, wait. Jin-Woo shook his head. Before he was turned into the now trustworthy Knight Iron, the former hunter Kim Cheol not only knew how to speak, but he was actually a human being in the first place. Even then, having a conversation with Iron was still impossible. It was the same story with Min Byung-gu. He was unable to say a single word before he returned to the void. And then, Fangs also shut his mouth for good after becoming a shadow soldier, even though he used to be such a chatty monster while still alive. So, how come? How come only this guy could talk? There was only one obvious difference between this guy and those who couldn't talk. Grades. Unlike his other soldiers with grades of Elite Knight or simply Knight, this guy came with a new grade called Commander. It was possible that one would be able to talk after reaching a certain grade. As he didn't have any solid proof yet, this was the most plausible explanation he could think of. That means, my boys will all start talking as soon as they level up high enough. It seemed that yet another reason was added to the list of why the levels of soldiers must be raised up higher. Jin-Woo thought for a little while, before throwing that one question to the ant's shadow, the one he always wanted to ask his soldiers before. "I'm the one who killed you. Yet, you still wish to serve me." A completely unexpected reply came from the ant's shadow. "I didn't die, but, through the power of my liege, I am reborn." The shadow then raised his head, and while meeting Jin-Woo's gaze, it continued on. "Within me, elation overflows. I shall follow my liege, for eternity." Ba-dump. Why did it happen? Was it because he felt the shadow's true feelings? Jin-Woo's heart pounded powerfully right at that moment when the ant's shadow swore his eternal loyalty. He placed his hand on his chest to somehow calm his wildly beating heart. It quickly regained its usual calmness. It was then the ant's shadow lowered his head again and pleaded with Jin-Woo once more. "Oh, my king, please grant me a name." The talk had reverted back to the beginning. This sure came across as a rather different experience to Jin-Woo now that he was hearing the plea of the subject directly from itself, rather than from some prompts of the system. A name. From the get-go, he didn't pay all that much attention to the naming of his soldiers, but even then, it's a bit too much to call it ant this and ant that, right? There were already hundreds of similar ants like him now in Jin-Woo's army, so it wouldn't do for a knight commander to be saddled with a name like Ant. Now would it? That was why. Jin-Woo pondered for a little while, before a smirk formed on his face. Baru. He recalled the name of an author who became famous through the novel called Ants. He readily made up his mind after only thinking about it for a very short time. Your name will now be Baru. After Jin-Woo granted him the new name, Baru lowered his already lowered head even further to the ground as if he was truly moved by the gesture. "I am grateful, my liege." The information floating above Baru's head had already been amended by then. Commander grade. It's done. Feeling genuinely pleased with his choice of the name, Jin-Woo turned towards the queen's corpse. Now, it really was the turn of the queen to get her shadow extracted. Maybe he got a confidence boost from successfully transforming Baru into his shadow soldier, because the Queen's shadow extraction turned out to be a rather painless affair. Rise up. Accompanied by the scream that sounded like the death throes, the beast soldier resembling the Ant Queen emerged out from the shadow. Nice. Jin-Woo expressed his delight at the continuous successful extractions, but then began tilting his head after discovering something rather odd. What's this? His connections to the shadow soldiers who were originally ant monsters suddenly grew fainter after the Queen's shadow materialized. It almost felt as if a pale gray fog was covering up the threads connecting them. Baru. Even before he finished calling it, Baru had already approached Jin-Woo's side. Step. If it weren't for his perception stat that had climbed past the 200 mark, Jin-Woo would never have followed that movement properly with his naked eyes alone. Such a creature was one of his loyal soldiers now. Jin-Woo felt his confidence soaring up even higher from that realization. You know what's going on here? Jin-Woo asked while pointing at the Queen's shadow with his chin. Baru knew everything there was to know when it came to the inner workings of the Ant Army, so it made sense to ask him. He politely made his reply. The ruling of the Ant Army. It's the Queen's innate ability. So, did that mean the authority to control the army of ant shadows would automatically be handed over to the Queen? But that is a bit. Even though the Queen was subservient to him, he thought that it wasn't okay to entrust the control of all of his ant soldiers, because he'd have to issue orders through the Queen every single time. Jin-Woo scratched his chin for a bit before asking Baru again. Okay, what about the reason for the decrease in the Queen's magic energy? Most of the Queen's magic energy is for propagation. Propagation is impossible without a body, that is why. Jin-Woo cut him off there. That's why it only has half of its original magic power. That is correct, my liege. By piecing together what Baru had said, the Queen didn't seem to have much of a use for Jin-Woo. After a short deliberation later, he decided to cancel the summoning altogether. He didn't have any reason whatsoever to keep around a subordinate who had no use but only continued to drain his limited resources. Now did he? The Queen's shadow instantly became smoke and scattered in the air. His shadow was now packed to the brim with soldiers, so the only things remaining here are the magic crystals. Jin-Woo took a look around him. Top-grade magic crystals only seen within rank S gates were rolling on the floor like common pebbles. Since there was no one watching here, and he was the one who killed the majority of them, he could have swept them all up if he wanted to do so. However, Jin-Woo gave up on that idea. He heard that these crystals would be used to compensate the victims, as well as to rebuild the Jeju Island to its former glory. Jin-Woo wasn't exactly hurting for cash, so he wouldn't covet after other people's stuff. Still, I'm sure no one will mind me taking this one. Jin-Woo took out the magic crystal from Baru's original body. It was a beautiful pitch-black magic crystal that resembled a gemstone. After pocketing the magic crystal, Jin-Woo summoned out Kaizal inside a suite of South Korea's top luxury hotel. Although his presence had been buried under the huge news of the Jeju Island raid recently, it was still an undeniable fact that one of the world's most powerful hunters had taken up a temporary residence there. Thomas switched off the monitor still playing the video of the raid. He had already seen that recorded video 3 times by now. Laura, who stood next to him, asked him. She accompanied him to Korea as his sole subordinate. What do you think, sir? Well, it's as you can see. He leaned against the couch and placed his legs on the coffee table. So, are you sure that's the hunter Mr. H. Wang was investigating? Yes, and he asked you what would happen if he killed someone in Korea. Yes, Thomas ordered the potential connection between H. Wang Dong-soo and Seong Jin-Woo to be secretly investigated as soon as Laura made her report. And, as it turned out, there was only one connection between the two. That would be H. Wang Dong-soo's older brother, H. Wang Dong-seok. He and Seong Jin-Woo entered the same dungeon together, but only the latter walked out alive, while the former went missing. No one would question what happened inside a dungeon. That had become common sense throughout the world now. So, it's revenge, is it? Most likely. And here I thought that he had no family. He hid it pretty well. I heard that Mr. H. Wang's brother was meticulous in hiding the family connection, sir. Probably because he was involved in shady stuff, that's why. I guess it will become far harder to meet Seong Jin-Woo now, what with an incident like that taking place. I believe so, Laura replied confidently. There was only one reason why the master of Scavenger Guild, as well as one of the most renowned hunters in the world, Thomas, gave himself some time off and came to this small nation. And that was to meet Seong Jin-Woo. More specifically, he wanted to find out what might happen if Mr. H. Wang did get to have a go with Seong Jin-Woo for real. What if, even after we did all this, the two of them end up fighting? What will you do then, sir? Laura, don't you know me? Thomas grinned deeply. Mr. H. Wang is Scavenger Guild's asset, and Scavenger is my property. I will never forgive anyone who dares to touch my property, even if that's the American government itself. One person's power equaled that of an entire country. His name was Thomas Andre, one of only 5 in the entire world. This was the confidence that only a special authority rank hunter, an international powerhouse, could possess. Military personnel and hunters landed on Jeju Island to recover the remains of Hunter Min Byung-gu. They were from the Yeongnam District's guild, the Night Order. The master of the Night Order Guild, Park Jong-soo, had to doubt his own eyes, because there was a good-looking foreign man leisurely strolling out of the ant tunnel's entrance at that very moment. But that was just impossible. The ants being completely wiped out should still be a top secret, so how could this be? I ask you who you are. Why are you coming out from there? It was unknown whether the foreigner didn't understand a single word coming out of his mouth or wasn't planning to answer in the first place. No, that man just stood there, smiling brightly. Jeong Yun-T always had been the act first, talk later type of a guy. But even he had to take a step back and cautiously observe his surroundings after sensing the ominous aura. Unfortunately, soldiers didn't possess the hunter-like sensory perception. They belatedly discovered the foreigner's presence and hurriedly raised their firearms. Park Jong-soo quickly dissuaded them, fearing that they might end up inadvertently killing someone. He couldn't understand the language being spoken here. It wasn't that he had never heard of it, but more like it didn't even originate from Earth, to begin with, judging from the way that man sounded and how he enunciated the words. What is he saying? One could sometimes meet intelligent monsters in higher-ranked dungeons. What that man said sounded almost like the language spoken by those creatures. Which means is that, snap, like puppets with their strings cut, the soldiers and hunters all collapsed to the ground along with the sound of a crisp finger snap. That mysterious man wasn't responsible for this event. He looked behind him and testily spoke up. What do you think you're doing? There was a short-statured, middle-aged man standing behind him now. There's no need to make a commotion here. I just put them all to sleep. The middle-aged man also wasn't speaking in the language of humans. Did you confirm it? The mysterious man nodded his head. It's definitely his power. How strange. The middle-aged man's gaze now shifted over to the collapsed hunters. Why is he helping out these humans? Who knows what he is thinking? If you're curious, why don't you go ask him personally? I'll decline. The middle-aged man shook his head before continuing on. We commence with the hunt as planned. Nothing has changed. Got it. The middle-aged man lightly twirled his hand in the air. A black gate small enough to let a person through opened up there. Oh, by the way. The middle-aged man stopped briefly and looked behind him when the mysterious man called out to him. I think one of them is here. You mean, here in South Korea? Since we're here, how about we take care of that guy first? The middle-aged man closed his eyes slightly. Soon, the information the mysterious man was talking about flowed into his head. However, the middle-aged man didn't look wholly convinced. If it's around here, let's leave it to his hands. You don't want to get involved, is that it? It's fine to think of it that way. It doesn't matter. The middle-aged man and his trailing voice soon disappeared along with the gate itself. After confirming that the black gate was closed for good, the mysterious man muttered to himself, "What a coward." He took a look at all the unmoving humans lying on the ground. They were only knocked out for a little while and should regain their consciousness soon enough. The man snorted derisively and extended his hand towards the humans. However, he quietly withdrew his hand. Well, there's no need to raise a commotion. He also entered a small gate and disappeared from the spot as well. The key he found inside the cursed random box was shining brightly as if to remind him of where it had been hiding all along. Rarity. Type, key. You have met the required condition. A key allowing you entry into the Karutenen Temple. It can be used at the designated gate. The location of the designated gate will be revealed after the predetermined time has been reached. Remaining time, 417,652. The item information he couldn't see before was now filling up his view. Karutenen Temple. Jin-Woo began tilting his head in confusion. What was going on here? He was pretty certain that he had never heard of that name before. So how come it sounded so familiar to him? No, hold on. I have heard of it before. He carefully combed through the maze of his memories until he finally recalled what he was searching for, and his brows shot up in response. The Dual Dungeon. More specifically, that name was etched on a stone tablet held by a statue, found in the ancient temple located right at the end of the Dual Dungeon. The memories of that fateful day were coming back to him one by one. Indeed, that stone tablet's text indicated that the name of the temple filled with those terrifying statues was none other than Karutenen. It couldn't have been a simple coincidence that the name carved into that stone tablet and the name of the temple and the key's information was exactly the same. Which could mean I can go back inside that place with this key. The system was definitely summoning him back to the place where it all began. The key that emitted the bright light all on its own, perhaps fearing the distinct possibility of him never bothering to read its information. And then there was the name of the location where this key was supposed to be used, written so clearly that he'd never miss it. I still have over 2 weeks left. The system hadn't lied to him once until now. So, the gate in question would definitely open up in the location as noted in the item's information. Was I really planning to walk in there again? Ha ha ha. A wry chuckle leaked out of his mouth without him realizing it. He used to break out in an uncontrollable shiver just from recalling the emptiness below his knee he saw back then. But now, fighting spirit began burning powerfully in his eyes, instead. I'm different now. He felt utterly confident of his chances now. Heck, he even felt a certain expectation bubbling up inside him, wondering if he'd be able to turn those stone statues, or even the god statue itself, into his shadow soldiers. There was also something else to consider. He might be hit with an unknown penalty if he decided to ignore the system's summons. Didn't he already realize the fact that, depending on the choices he makes, the system would either become his ally or an enemy? He had left the very motivated Jin-Woo in charge of the initial process of founding a guild. I shall never forgive those trying to obstruct the path of Hyung-nim. Jin-Woo quickly screen captured the offending online forum post in question, as well as the comments appearing below it, and then proceeded to write up a formal letter of complaint with lightning speed. He moved so expertly and quickly that he must have had more than enough experience doing this thing. And, in the blink of an eye, his work was done. Phew. His hand departing from the computer's keyboard lightly wiped away a single bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. He had done it again. Today, he was indeed successful in rooting out an insidious group trying to slander his Hyung-nim. So, it was you. Jin-Woo heard that there was someone out there that pounced on any negative comments or false articles about him online like a wild beast and, while relying on the threat of legal action, demanded them to be taken down immediately. But to think that person was someone so close by. Jin-Woo's complexion reddened from embarrassment now that his secret activity had been inadvertently exposed to the open. Hyung-nim, it's only been a day since we started advertising on the online job marketplace, but we've been swarmed by the applicants wanting to become our fellow founding members, so I went ahead and compiled a list for you to take a look. Oh, let's talk about it after I come back. He was running short on time to begin with. Hyung-nim, have you decided on the name of the guild? Indeed, this was the most pressing issue of them all. Because you'd need a name of the guild if you wanted to place job postings on the bulletin boards, or even when conducting other official businesses, now wouldn't it? Does he have something in mind for the name of the guild? Jin-Woo's heart was pounding in anticipation for Jin-Woo's answer. He was fully prepared to suggest the names he had thought up if Hyung-nim was unable to come up with one. How about putting the Seong of Seong Jin-Woo and Yu of Jin-Woo together to name the guild Seong-Yu? He quickly shook his head, though. It's got a nice meaning, but it sounds a bit. If you were to consider how it sounded, then it was indeed better to flip the two words around to make Yu Seong. But then again, he'd never be able to accept the fact that his own surname would come before his Hyung-nim's. Hang on a minute. What if I just take the last part of our names and name the guild Woo-ho? Jin-Woo pondered for a bit while Jin-Woo continued to gaze at him with eyes glinting with the light of expectation. A smirk found its way to Jin-Woo's lips and he finally made his reply. How about Solo Play Guild? Jin-Woo blinked his eyes several times. Was he supposed to start laughing here? But didn't Jin-Woo's expression look like he wasn't joking at all? Jin-Woo didn't expect to see a reaction anyway, so he quickly turned towards the door to leave. See you later. Jin-Woo fell into a train of thought while watching Jin-Woo make his exit from the office. So, there was something Hyung-nim couldn't do, after all. As expected, his Hyung-nim was a human being, just like everyone else. Although he was afraid that the solo play would get stuck as the guild's name, Jin-Woo also felt just a tiny bit more reassured after being reminded of Jin-Woo being a human like him. Wow, I'm speechless. But I thought that you can't call out that many summoned creatures. My 10-year-old tumor got cured from watching the assault of Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim's summoned creatures. By the way, mister, that tumor must have been a minor one since you had it for only 10 years. It was so cool. It was the best. I lost my parents 4 years ago on Jeju Island. I know that Jin-Woo Hunter Nim won't read this, but the operation managed to capture the interest of all South Korean citizens. It was no wonder that various online forums were overflowing with the stories related to the raid, and Jin-Woo's name always cropped up in those discussions. Also, a hot debate regarding how high Jin-Woo's skills should be rated opened up among the netizens famed for their love of comparisons. With his powers, shouldn't we say that our country now also has a special authority rank in our midst? Aye. With only that, you should limit your intake of kimchi soup per day. But why not? He almost solo cleared a rank S dungeon, and the gap between him and other rank S hunters is pretty vast, you know. Hunter Jin-Woo's record isn't extensive enough. If his skills are for real, then people will acknowledge him sooner or later. In any case, man, he was so freaking awesome. A rankie is only a bit better than a regular person, so how can someone like that become so strong? Is Hunter Jin-Woo a reawakened? Lots of people don't seem to know that Jin-Woo is a reawakened. He applied to have his private information protected right away, so, of course, there were some people among many who felt mighty uncomfortable about Jin-Woo as well. But, hold up, if Jin-Woo participated in the raid from the get-go, Min Byung-gu wouldn't have died, right? He wanted to be left out in the beginning, so why did he show up in the middle? Looks like guys above mine haven't seen the article put up by the association explaining themselves yet. What article? Links please. The contents of the article went like this. Even though he was ranked S, Jin-Woo lacked experience in entering high-ranked dungeons. Therefore, the association chose to keep him in reserve nearby in case of an emergency, instead of making him join the raid team from the beginning. Once the situation became dire, they decided to insert him right away. It was a hastily cooked-up story, but it proved to be enough to convince the masses. Just like how his father sacrificed his life to save a countless number of his colleagues, Hunter Min Byung-gu's sacrifice wasn't in vain. Without his dedicated effort to heal his comrades, it'd have been really difficult for the Korean hunters to walk out of the ant tunnel alive. Not only that, he used his powers to save the life of one more hunter even in death. Min Byung-gu's shadow actually felt relieved after it confirmed the color of life gradually seep back into Hunter Cha-Hyeon's complexion. From that alone, Jin-Woo could sense how much the healer cared for his comrades. Coincidentally, Jin-Woo spotted Cha-Hyeon in the distance as he quietly approached the black and white portrait of the deceased to lay down the flowers. But when their gazes met, she suddenly flinched and fell into a panicked state. Did they come together? The members of the Korean team around her sent him a silent greeting with a slight nod of their heads. But Cha-Hyeon looked as if she had no clue which expression she was supposed to make right now. So that woman can make a face like that, too. He couldn't recall any other times when she didn't carry that expressionless face of hers. Indeed, one should get to know somebody for a longer time before passing judgment, that's for sure. Jin-Woo shifted his gaze away and stood before the portrait. Hunter Min Byung-gu within the black photo frame was smiling brightly without a care in the world. Jin-Woo placed the flower in front of the portrait and closed his eyes for a brief moment. I hope you find yourself in a better place. Finishing up with the prayer for the departed, he turned around to see a familiar figure approach him from the distance. Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. The low, bassy voice naturally belonged to the association president, Go Gun-Huey. You have business in the association. May I inquire what that is? Oh, actually, I need a guild master license, you see. Pardon? A question mark floated up above Go Gun-Huey's head. Why do you need the Guildmaster license when you already possess a Rank S license? Wait, does that mean a Rank S can establish a guild without a license? Of course. Go Gun-Huey formed a good-natured smile and continued on. If you wish to form your own guild, all you have to do is to give the association a call. We'll take care of the rest. The Rank S was a realm he never expected to step into half a year ago. So, it wasn't surprising to see Jin-Woo greatly underestimate all the cool benefits this rank came with. He was inwardly flustered after learning of something he didn't know until now. But this is actually for the better, isn't it? By any chance, have you cast some kind of a barrier spell over Jeju Island? What do you mean? Where was this barrier magic thingy coming from, all of a sudden? Did something happen in Jeju Island after he killed every ant there and left for home? Go Gun-Huey calmly explained what had happened. During the operation to retrieve Hunter Min Byung-gu's remains, there was an incident of the military personnel, and the accompanying hunters losing their consciousness in the same location. Rather than losing consciousness, it'd be more appropriate to say that they had all fallen asleep instead. I thought the elite members of the Night Order were asked to go to Jeju Island. Jin-Woo's question elicited a nod from Go Gun-Huey. They were either hunters in the top of the rank a pile, or rank BS who are very close to rank in terms of their abilities. To be able to put not just one, but several dozens of such people to sleep all at once, a regular rank S mage wouldn't even dare to try performing a spell of that magnitude. That's why I had to ask you about it, just in case. I was hoping that maybe you cast a barrier there but forgot to tell us about it. Here was the solid proof that both Hunters Association and its boss, Go-Gun Huey, rated Jin-Woo's abilities incredibly high. Unfortunately for them, Jin-Woo's speciality didn't lay in casting debuff or abnormal status magic. I'm sorry, I haven't done that. I see, I guess so. Traces of worry slowly entered Go-Gun Huey's expression. The most optimistic explanation he could think of turned out to be wide off the mark in the end. What did the hunters say, sir? That is, Go-Gun Huey formed a troubled face of a man finding it hard to explain something, before continuing on his explanations with some difficulty. Not only the soldiers, but even the hunters can't remember anything that happened before they lost their consciousness. His voice sounded even more dispirited next. Actually, we can't even figure out whether they were victims of a magic spell or not in the first place. If it were just the soldiers, who were simply regular people, it'd be possible to knock them out with something like the sleeping gas. But even the rank A hunters and their exceptional physical abilities fell victim as well. So, it couldn't have been a conventional weapon of some kind. Could it have been a trap left behind by the ants? Jin-Woo was really tempted to summon out Baru right now and ask him about it, but if he did that, this funeral venue might morph into a blood-splattered battlefield in no time at all. It was then, the young man who must have been an association employee approached them in hurried steps and whispered something to Go-Gun Huey's ear. The association president formed a rueful expression as he spoke to Jin-Woo. A guest has arrived sooner than expected, and unfortunately, I must be on my way now. Thank you for your time. You too, sir. After sharing brief goodbyes, Go-Gun Huey hurriedly left the venue and disappeared from the view along with that unnamed employee. Now that he no longer had any reason to go to the association, Jin-Woo figured that he might as well go home. Instead, he too left the venue and began walking towards the location of the parked van. But then, what's this? He seemed to have picked up a somewhat puzzling tale since from a short while ago. Jin-Woo tilted his head in confusion. Aren't you supposed to do your best not to get discovered when tailing someone? Not only that, any all-regular folks wouldn't even dare to dream about tailing a rank S hunter, too. Huh? Well, I'll be. Jin-Woo was getting more and more dumbfounded here. He even realized for the first time that he didn't want to deal seriously with someone who was this unprofessional at what he was supposed to do. However, just as Jin-Woo was about to grab the door handle of his van, he heard a voice calling out to him from behind. Are you Mr. Seong Jin-Woo? Jin-Woo smirked slightly and turned around while thinking to himself, well, you've finally revealed your true colors, haven't you? Yes, I am. But then, Jin-Woo was momentarily taken aback after confirming the face of his opponent. He's a foreigner. That man's Korean was so perfect that Jin-Woo didn't expect him to be a Westerner at all. Meanwhile, the young Westerner, sporting a business suit so slick that it bordered on being a fashion statement, formed a smile as bright as his golden hair color. This is who I am. The man pulled out a business card and presented it to Jin-Woo. His name, the organization he worked for, as well as his contact numbers, were all printed in large, legible letters on the card. Hunter Bureau. What did an elite agent from the most powerful organization in the US want from him now? No, there's only one reason why the Hunter Bureau would want to speak to a hunter. Jin-Woo tore his eyes away from the card and looked straight at the agent, prompting the American to introduce himself with a sunny smile. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. Please call me Adam from now on. There is a piece of information we'd like to share with you, Hunter Nim. Information, is it? Yes, and you won't ever hear about this information from any other existing country or organization in the world. Except ours, of course. Jin-Woo tilted his head slightly. What would be their reason for revealing such highly classified information to a foreign hunter like him, a complete stranger? Why are you willing to share such information with me? Jin-Woo's probing question only managed to elicit another round of a refreshing smile from Adam White. We certainly will get something in return by revealing this information to an exclusive group of a specially chosen few. Specially chosen few, he said, which meant that the Americans considered Jin-Woo to be eligible to enter that category now. Sure enough, that roused his curiosity rather greatly. Okay, let's hear it. That is as far as I'm permitted to tell you, Hunter Nim. As for the rest, you'll have to hear it from our deputy director. We have a car ready nearby. How about accompanying me to meet up with the deputy director? Unfortunately for him, though, it was Jin-Woo who had the final say in the matter. Information, is it? It could only be one of two things. Either it was info that would benefit him in some way after learning of it, or a tip of someone coming after his life. Funnily enough, he didn't feel all that compelled to get to the bottom of this matter at the moment. I'll sleep on it and give you a call later. Adam felt like someone had just punched him in the back of his head as this unexpected turn of the conversation left him reeling in shock. What? The deputy director of the Hunter Bureau came all this way to share information. Yet he's ignoring that and wants to go on his way. Jin-Woo didn't look like he was bluffing here, because he was already opening the driver's door of the van. Cold perspiration immediately coated Adam White's forehead. If Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was allowed to slip through his fingers now, then who knew when he'd get another chance like this? No, there was even a distinct possibility that this could be the very last time. It was unknown whether the Korean intended for this reaction or not. But without a doubt, the ones ruining the missed opportunity would be them, not him. Well, have a nice day. Just as Jin-Woo was about to climb into the van, the restless Adam White urgently cried out. Upgrader, an upgrader. Adam formed an expression of a defeated man and explained the meaning behind the word he just spat out. Did you know that there is an awakened who can enhance the abilities of other awakened? Yup, you should have started with that from the beginning. Right away, Jin-Woo realized that the stuff being shared by Agent Adam White, no, the deputy director of the Hunter Bureau, was actually of far greater importance than mere information. An awakened who can enhance other awakened, is it? Finally, Jin-Woo felt compelled enough now. We're here. Jin-Woo noted that the name of the hotel was the same as the one from the memo Yu Jin-Ho handed over to him not too long ago. Wait, that English-speaking foreigner Yu Jin-Ho was talking about, could it have been one of these guys? Jin-Woo followed after Adam White and climbed up to the suite where the deputy director was waiting for him. The deputy director of the Hunter Bureau, Michael Connor, failed to disguise his excitement at the sight of a certain Oriental man standing behind his subordinate. Very good. One of the more difficult aspects of negotiation was bringing the other party to the negotiating table. One could even declare that half the battle was won already by doing so. His self-introduction was translated into fluent Korean with the speed of lightning by Adam White. Allow me to be frank with you, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. With a solemn, determined face, the deputy director pushed a rather sizable mountain of files towards Jin-Woo and continued on. We, at the United States of America, want you, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. These are all the documents needed to emigrate to America. Now normally, you'd need at least 1 or 2 years for these papers to be processed. However, it'll be a different story for you, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. The deputy director then raised his index finger. Just a single second. He declared in a very confident voice. If you agree to immigrate, then you'll become an American citizen in 1 second. And not as a simple, regular citizen. Either, no, you become eligible to receive the equal treatment as the nation's existing top-ranked hunters. Jin-Woo looked back at the deputy director. But, I only came here because Adam said something about some information. The deputy director let out a burst of genial laughter when he heard that. That isn't entirely unrelated to what I was talking about. I don't understand. Hunter Nim. If you give us your word that you'll become the next American hunter, then we will definitely enhance your abilities to an even higher realm. The so-called upgrader. It seemed that this awakened could really do what that moniker implied. Still, Jin-Woo was not entirely convinced, even if the deputy director said roughly the same thing as Agent Adam White. Could there really be an awakened possessing such a power? That's why he decided to make DMN sure. To enhance one's abilities, can such a thing be for real? Jin-Woo's apparent interest caused the deputy director to become even more excited. Actually, she's here with us right now. Jin-Woo already knew that there was someone else within the hotel's suite. From a while ago, he had picked up on the minute amount of magic power leaking out from the gap of the closed door just over there. Because the magic energy emitted didn't seem all that powerful, he was inwardly thinking that person was too weak to be a bodyguard of someone as important as the Hunter Bureau's deputy director. And now, his suspicion proved to be correct. The deputy director quickly issued an order. Please bring Madame Selner here. Click. Almost immediately, the door was opened and 2 agents escorted a middle-aged African-American woman out from the room beyond. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed slightly after picking up on a strange vibe coming off of her. Somehow, she gave off a different aura from other, regular awakened. This is Madame Norma Selner. She is the lone awakened, the only one of her type in the entire world. who can enhance the abilities of other awakened to even greater heights. At the end of the introduction, Madame Selner did a simple nod of her head as a greeting to Jin-Woo. He reciprocated the greeting with the nod as well. Madame Selner, please, if you will, briefly explain what you can do to Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. She formed a teasing smile while staring at the still unconvinced Jin-Woo's face. Everyone has the same look as you in the beginning, Hunter Nim. However, she then leaned in closer to Jin-Woo and whispered softly to him. Once they have a taste, they have no choice but to beg me for more. Madam, please. The deputy director furrowed his brows a little, prompting her to laugh out and wave her hand about. I know. Don't worry, Director Connor. I know that he's a very important man. Still with an alluring smile, Madame Selner began with her explanation. Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. As you may know already, all awakened face a limit they can't breach. No one can overcome it. That was why the ranks of the awakened would never change, unless one was lucky enough to go through a reawakening process. This was common knowledge that all living hunters out there knew all too well. But, madam, you can. Even before Jin-Woo could finish his question, Madame Selner formed an expression of a little kid picking up the final piece of strawberry on top of a cake that she'd been saving up for the very last. You're correct. Jin-Woo's eyes grew progressively wider. I can increase that limit even higher in 3 separate stages. I don't know whether to call it a forced reawakening, or simply waking up the latent potential sleeping within the subject already. But yes, I can do it. What an incredible ability that was. What she said are all true. It's just that, once she uses her powers once, she needs to take a lengthy break to recover her energy. So, only around 3 to 4 lucky awakened get to enjoy this benefit in a single year. How effective is it? It depends on individuals, but once one goes through all 3 stages, they say that they grew stronger by a minimum of 20%, and as much as 30% over their original powers. 20 to 30%. With the average of his stat values nearing the 250 mark, if Jin-Woo got that mystery enhancement, that average value would shoot past the 300 mark instead. Without a doubt, that would be an enormous leap up. As long as these guys weren't lying to him, of course. Is she casting a buff that raises one's powers? Or is it more like raising the fixed level cap? Regardless of what it was, the ability she possessed would be like a precious treasure for all the hunters out there. Which also meant that there should be no shortages of people aiming for her, too. We ensure her absolute safety and reward her accordingly, while she enhances the abilities of those hunters we deem worthy of joining us. We have been maintaining this symbiotic relationship for a long time now. And so, that's where the deputy director bookended the explanation. Now, the time for the fireworks to begin. Madame Selner's ability, that is precisely the gift we wish to give to you, Hunter Nim. A gift, is it? Indeed, could there be a gift even more valuable than this one? If you become a hunter of the United States of America, you will be the first in line to receive this benefit. Also, we will make sure that you get the best possible terms when negotiating with any guilds you wish to join. From the perspective of an ordinary hunter, these were simply too good of conditions to say no to. Only now could Jin-Woo understand why Hwang Dong-soo didn't even hesitate once and emigrated to the States when everyone was criticizing him for it. The enormous sum of money the Americans reportedly paid him was most likely a cover-up story to hide the real reason. Regular hunters would lose their collective SHT if they ever heard of such a tale. Can you prove that she really possesses such a power? Everything they said so far were just words, and there had been no proof to back them up yet. It was her turn to button next. No need to rush. Today, I'm only here to undo the first button, you know. Jin-Woo finally realized what she meant earlier. One taste, and people beg her for more, was it? Just as she had alluded to, every hunter seeing her powers with their own eyes chose to head to America right away, 100 times out of 100. Her sky-high confidence was based off on that. The deputy director quietly asked a question to Jin-Woo. It is as she says. So, will you let us unlock your first stage, without anything in return? Think of it as a service from us, Hunter Nim. Madame Selner lightly grasped Jin-Woo's wrist. When he turned to look at her, she formed a gentle smile and gestured to him to get closer. Please, look into my eyes. Look deeply into them. That will be your first step. Was she telling the truth? To confirm if this Madame Selner really did possess the power the Hunter Bureau was swearing by, Jin-Woo decided to follow her instructions for the time being. The deputy director leaned against the back of the chair and crossed his arms. It's done. He's ours now. The game was already over. Hunter Seong Jin-Woo had been constantly maintaining that cold, indifferent expression until now. But that was only because he hadn't yet experienced what this lady's power had to offer. Once the first lifting of the natural limit was completed, Hunter Seong Jin-Woo would call them on his own volition sooner rather than later. No, if he had an impulsive personality, then he might sign the immigration documents right here, right now. The deputy director's curiosity shifted onto something else now. Just how high will his limit be, I wonder? The deputy director uncrossed his arms and rubbed his chin, his eyes of anticipation firmly locked on Jin-Woo. But it was then. Madame Selner sucked in her breath as her eyes began to quake quite violently. Madame Selner stared deep into Jin-Woo's eyes for a long time, before she screamed at the top of her lungs as if she had seen something she shouldn't have. She fell off the chair onto the floor, almost right away. Two agents here to guard her whipped their pistols out and took aim at Jin-Woo. Stop. Have you all lost your minds? The deputy director witnessed the agents and their recklessness and cried out in alarm. Loud cussing exploded out of his mouth as he jumped up from his sitting position to push down the pointed pistols of the agents. Do you not know who this person is? How dare you point at him with such a thing? But, sir, the madam is. You idiots. If you're that worried about Madame Selner, then check up on her first. And my apologies. The agents quickly put their guns away and supported the shivering Madame Selner off from the ground. Her complexion had become so pale that she looked quite pitiful right now. Meanwhile, the deputy director bowed his back 90 degrees to Jin-Woo. I'm truly sorry, Hunter Nim. My agents committed a grave blunder. Judging from the previously relaxed voice of the deputy director tremble like that, he must have been frightened out of his wits rather greatly just now. They are trained to put the safety of the madam above all else, but to think they'd be stupid enough to point a gun at a rank S hunter. If something like this happened in front of either Thomas Andre or China's Liu Zhaijing, then the hearts of those two agents pulling out their guns would have stopped beating long before he had the chance to apologize. What a relief that Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was such an understanding gentleman. The deputy director sighed out in relief and wiped the pooled sweat off his nose. He managed to put out the most pressing flames first. Next, it was time to focus on the other matter. Madam, you're sweating so much. Are you feeling unwell somewhere? The deputy director may have shed a few cold sweat drops over the volatile situation just now, but she was completely soaked from head to toe at the moment. What's going on here? Worried about her condition, Jin-Woo got up from the chair and cautiously made his approach, but she didn't want to look him in the eye, and began shivering even harder. Madame Selner's condition isn't very good today. May I give you a call at another time? After Jin-Woo had left, the deputy director found himself alone with Madame Selner in the hotel's suite. Madam, what happened back there? They had worked with many hunters before, and this wasn't Madame Selner's first rodeo either, meaning this would be the first time something like this happened. She suppressed her pounding heart and managed to squeeze out her trembling voice. He is a king, a very powerful king. The deputy director's eyes grew wider and wider. Those who knew how her power worked were the director of the Hunter Bureau, the deputy, and of course, Madame Selner herself. Only these three, and she confirmed that Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was a king. Ba-dump, ba-dump. The deputy director sensed his heartbeat pick up pace, which means he's on the same level as the special authority rank hunters. She shook her head. No, I don't. This was my first time experiencing such a phenomenon, so I can't be sure at all. He is definitely a king, but he's also different from the other kings. When I looked into him, it too was looking back at me. But other hunters also. No, not Hunter Seong Jin-Woo, but the endless darkness hiding within him was staring back at me. Madame Selner hysterically cried out. Her complexion paled again and her body shuddered greatly. This was the display of an instinctual fear all living organisms possessed, the fear of death. And he, the deputy director, focused on her words again. Her lips parted with so much difficulty. He doesn't have any limits. What? A gate formed in the middle of a road. Not only that, it was rated to be a rank B gate that no regular raid team could do something about, too. Where is it located? The best course of action for this problem was to contact a major guild and have them send over a capable raid team. But then, hold on. Having heard the report from the agent on site, Go-Gun Huey's expression became a bit strange. Didn't Hunter Seong Jin-Woo get an office for his guild around there? The road suddenly became really clogged up. Jin-Woo was in deep contemplation as he found himself stuck in the middle of an unmoving sea of traffic. That lady, she definitely saw something. That woman called Madame Norma Selner. She must have faced countless powerful hunters, yet she couldn't even meet his gaze because she felt a crippling fear of him. Just what did she see in him? Was it the traces of his system? The system would make a few ridiculous demands from him every now and then, sure, but it was certainly not a scary existence. Instead of being scary, that thing's my greatest ally. However, how would it look like in other people's views? Besides all that, what is up with this traffic, man? Jin-Woo furrowed his brows at the road ahead, utterly mired in congestion as far as his eyes could see. This is why taking the subway is so much more convenient. Just as he began wondering if there was an accident up ahead or something, his phone stuck in the car charger vibrated rather noisily. Jin-Woo checked the ID of the caller. It's the association president. They saw each other in the funeral venue only a few hours ago, so what business did he have in calling him so soon? Jin-Woo tapped the answer icon. Hunter Nim, it's Go Gun-Huey speaking. The association president explained the situation taking place in the middle of Seoul in a calm voice. Excuse me. A gate opened up in the middle of the road. He was beginning to think that this traffic jam was far too heavy to be normal, but there was a good reason behind it, as it turned out. Our agents have evaluated it as a rank B gate. Would you like to take care of it for us, Hunter Nim? Jin-Woo struggled to suppress the giggles of joy this truly excellent news managed to awaken. I don't have the raid permit, so can I just enter like that, sir? Hunter Nim, who issues the raid permits? It's issued by the association. And who am I? Jin-Woo suppressed his laughter again and replied seriously. You're the president of the Hunters Association. That's why. Don't worry about anything and please take care of it. Well, in that case, thank you for the thank you for the opportunity. Jin-Woo clenched his fist. He climbed out of the van and began walking after the trace of the magic energy leaking out from the gate. Because of the cars packed tightly on all sides, he didn't even need to park the van somewhere else, too. Reporters had already formed a cordon around the gate by the time he got there, and the association employees, as well as the members of the local police force, were restricting the access. Jin-Woo brushed past the wall of the reporters and approached the gate. But then, a female association employee with a by-the-book demeanor abruptly blocked his path. Please hold it. What do you think you're doing? She pushed at his chest and spoke loudly. Too bad. No matter how hard she pushed with her small hands, Jin-Woo didn't show any signs of budging from the spot. Seong Jin-Woo. Wasn't he the same guy who killed all those ant monsters on Jeju Island? It's Seong Jin-Woo. I think Seong Jin-Woo came here to deal with the gate personally. People feeling fed up from being stuck here began recognizing Jin-Woo, and their complexions brightened greatly. Some people among them with appointments to get to even cried out in elation, too. However, the female employee completely disregarded the reactions of the citizens and showed no signs of backing down. She hesitated slightly before asking him, What brings you here? What did she even mean? What brings him here? There would be only one reason why a hunter chose to stand before a gate, wouldn't it? Even if you're a rank S hunter, sir, I will not tolerate any behavior that ignores proper procedures. Jin-Woo was lost for words and blankly stared at her face. He didn't expect her to come out like this at all. She thought that she had succeeded in persuading a rank S hunter and continued on with her next question. Did you obtain the raid permit? No, wait. Even if you did obtain the permit, since you haven't met the minimum required number of team members, you can't be allowed in. The female employee was impressively unyielding. Jin-Woo could tell from the look in her eyes that she wasn't doing this out of spite. No, she just seemed to be the type to stick as close to the rule book as humanly possible. Hold on for a sec. Jin-Woo immediately called somebody on the phone. After the call connected to the other side, he pushed the phone to her. Here. When the female employee looked at him puzzled, Jin-Woo spoke to her in a clear voice. Please, take it. The call's actually for you. She maintained her puzzled expression while asking him. Who is it on the phone? Someone else you may not tolerate as well. She inadvertently took the phone from him, but when she discovered the name of the call's receiver appearing on the screen, her brows shot up really high. Go Gun-Huey. This is the association president speaking. Sure enough, it was him. The female employee's eyes trembled noticeably before she began nodding her head over and over again. Yes, yes. No, sir. Yes, yes. I shall do as you say, sir. Jin-Woo hurriedly disappeared into the gate. Greatly annoyed by his antics now, the female employee shuddered from dissatisfaction and she threw, not a curse, but more like an unhappy grumble at his departing back. Father in heaven, sprain that guy's ankle or something inside the dungeon, please. However, Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was a man who walked away safely from the Jeju Island that was completely overrun with rank S monsters. Such a guy won't have much trouble inside a rank B dungeon, probably. But then, it happened at that moment. Screams were rising up from here and there. Ew, what's going on here? Why is it changing to red color? Right after Jin-Woo stepped past the gate, the eerie color of blood slowly spread over its black surface. It was a red gate. A terrifying event was unfolding right now. The female employee felt utterly devastated after seeing the red gate appear. Was it because I prayed for him to get that sprained ankle? Of course, that wasn't it. However, she couldn't get rid of the voices in her head telling her that it was her fault. She was taught that the Red Gate, a portal to another world, was one of the most dangerous places there was. She also heard that even the high-ranked hunters weren't guaranteed to get out of there alive. It can't be. Suddenly, her head was filled with the images of the worst-case scenario, and her complexion paled instantly. The vice master of the tentatively named Solo Play Guild, as well as its chief recruitment officer, its sole lawyer, and even its accountant, Jin-Ho smiled brightly as he saw Jin-Woo entering the office. "What's this?" Jin-Woo was nonchalant in his reply. "There was an open gate on the way to the office, so I made a pit stop." He went out only a couple of hours ago, yet during such a short period of time, he found a high-ranking dungeon, cleared it completely, and brought out all the magic crystals found within. "As expected of you, you're amazing, Hyung-nim." Jin-Woo quickly strode over to the conference suite as soon as Jin-Ho was finished and opened the door wide open. And then, inside this mostly empty conference suite, he found a woman sipping on a can of coffee all alone and in silence turning her head to meet his gaze. Incidentally, Jin-Ho had to quickly dash outside to get that coffee because they hadn't even bought proper office equipment yet. "What brings you here, Hunter Nim?" Jin-Woo asked his guest with a dumbfounded expression on his face. Then, Cha-hyeon opened her own mouth, still looking up at him from her sitting position. "I came to join your guild." Did he hear that right? Jin-Woo ended up doubting his own hearing. Then, Cha-hyeon was the vice master of South Korea's top guild, and her skills were ranked to be among the very best. But she willingly walked into a guild that hadn't even taken its first baby step yet. Unless she was being threatened into coming here, how could this situation make any sense? But then again, well, just who'd be brave enough to threaten her? Jin-Woo decided to bring up the one person with enough clout to potentially threaten her in South Korea. "Did the association president order you to do this?" Cha-hyeon formed a confused expression, evidently not understanding why Go-gun Huey was being brought up in this discussion. Why would he? It was Jin-Woo who couldn't understand what was going on here, so why was she making that face even though she was the reason for all this confusion? She's restless, her heartbeat, her breathing, even the glow within her eyes. She was doing her best to look composed, but there was no fooling Jin-Woo's sky-high perception. So, the question was, why was she forcing herself to this extent, and trying to enter the tentatively named Solo Play Guild? Jin-Woo had to ask her, "Don't you still have some time left in the duration of your contract with the Hunters Guild?" Now normally, the guild would negotiate contracts with hunters in 5-year terms. Cha-hyeon joined the Hunters Guild 2 years ago when she was evaluated to be a rank S, so at a bare minimum, she should still have 3 years left in her contract. "I have enough money to pay the penalty for breach of contract." Cha-hyeon's collected answer only elicited Jin-Woo's head tilting. Most of the time, such a penalty fee would be between 2 to 3 times the original signing fee. Thinking about the exorbitant sum the Hunters Guild must have forked out in order to sign up a rank S hunter like her, one didn't need to be a genius to figure out that the breach of contract penalty fee would be absolutely horrendous, as well. Since he was about to speak to her about harsh reality, Jin-Woo's attitude became very businesslike. "Our Solo Play Guild simply can't afford to pay the kind of signing fee your skill set warrants. Cha Hunter Nim. The name of your guild is Solo Play. You have a problem with the name that the Vice Master and myself came up with." "No, not really." Cha-hyeon let a soft sigh escape from her and continued on. "It doesn't matter. It's fine if you don't pay me the contract signing fee." She didn't mind signing a contract without any payment, even though she'd have to pay an enormous breach of contract fee to the Hunters Guild. What is she scheming here? At this point, he simply had to ask her or he'd die of curiosity. "Why are you willing to go through such a ringer just to join our guild?" As expected, Cha-hyeon couldn't easily answer him and kept her mouth resolutely shut. "But how can I even explain myself to him? That I sensed your presence next to me even after I lost my consciousness from the attack of that mutated ant monster. That I felt safe and warm after picking up on your scent as I sank deeper into an empty and endless dark void." There was no word in this world adequate enough to describe what she felt back then. Even if I explain it, he'd only say that I've gone mad. Her heart began beating faster after she learned of Hunter Seong Jin-Woo really being there. She felt so relieved, knowing that she wasn't imagining things. And also, what if she discovered that she wanted Jin-Woo to be by her side in the worst-case scenario of her being unable to escape from the cold blade of death? To think, it'd be like, "Please be right by my side until my final moments." How could she even attempt saying that, when just thinking about it made her blush uncontrollably? That was an impossible task for Cha-hyeon, who didn't know anything about a normal girl's sensibilities. That was why she finally spoke up an answer she cooked up before coming here. to be more comfortable. She raised her head to meet Jin-Woo's gaze and continue on with the rest. I wish to be live more comfortably. Although it wasn't exactly what she tried to say, it wasn't a complete lie either. She couldn't even lift her head properly from all the horrendous stink when high-ranked hunters were standing next to her. But, in contrast, she felt her mind getting peaceful in the presence of Jin-Woo. The meaning of Cha Hyun's comfortable was precisely that. Jin-Woo didn't interpret the meaning that way, but still, he could understand where she was coming from. He slowly nodded his head from her answer. She apparently wanted to leave a big guild like the Hunters and spend a more comfortable time in a far smaller guild like his. According to Jin-Woo's knowledge, Cha Hyun was either 22 or 23 years old. I'm sure the burden that a rank S must carry would be pretty heavy for a woman in her early 20s, especially more so after she felt the threat of death during the Jeju Island raid. Jin-Woo could easily understand her feelings as he too felt like abandoning everything and running away from it all countless times, back when he still worked for the association. Unfortunately for her, although her plight is pitiable, but he couldn't just accept her like that. Why would he have named the guild Solo Play? That was because he planned to book dungeons using the name of his guild and clear them all by himself. Actually, our guild has an admittance test you need to go through. Pardon, but the job posting didn't specify anything lie. Jin-Woo quickly cut off Cha Hyun's flustered words. This rule is pretty new, so it's possible that the Vice Master may have made a small error. The glow in Cha Hyun's eyes became quite serious at the mention of a test. What kind of a test is it? Jin-Woo was inwardly taken by surprise from her reaction. This gal, she was really serious. Because of her professional pride, he expected her to quit after being told about taking a test. However, Cha Hyun acted the exact opposite. No, she was actually burning up even hotter with the desire to win. He could sense her fervor hidden behind that expressionless mask of hers. Is she the type to face any fight coming her way head-on? Or was this the case of misplaced pride? Whatever the case may have been, Jin-Woo couldn't back off now while saying it was all a misunderstanding. It's to win against the summoned creature I pick. He swore that he heard the physical sound of a crack forming on her ego. Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim, is that how low your assessment of me is? What a mysterious thing this was. He only looked into her eyes briefly, yet it felt like her voice could be heard so clearly inside his head. However, Cha Hyun didn't display any of her thoughts and asked in her usual collected manner, "Which summon will you pick? For you, Cha Hunter Nim, I'll especially have to pick the strongest one." Alright, she wasn't backing down here. Most likely, she wouldn't have dreamed it in her wildest imaginations regarding who became the latest addition to Jin-Woo's summoned creatures. No, his Shadow Army collection. Jin-Woo thought that, since her will to win was so strong, she'd give up on her own after tasting defeat. He immediately agreed to the bout. Okay, let's do it. When will the test be? Right now. Jin-Woo wanted to establish his guild as soon as possible, so he didn't want to waste any more time on Cha Hyun. Since he came up with this idea, might as well do it now. The location would be the gymnasium of the Hunters Association. A rank S hunter could rent out the gymnasium whenever he felt like it. It was one of the many special privileges afforded to rank S hunters. Got it. Cha Hyun nodded her head. She too wanted to move things along as quickly as possible. They both stood up at the same time as if they made a promise to do that. Hold on. It was then, a certain thought flashed past his brain. He quickly called out to Cha Hyun as she was about to turn the door handle. Cha Hunter Nim, please wait. Pardon, there's no need to go that way. Cha Hyun formed a confused expression. There was only one door in the conference suite. He obviously wasn't suggesting that they should jump out of the window, so Jin-Woo quickly walked over to her unmoving frame. I have a quicker way of getting there, actually. Excuse me, but I must be touching you if I'm to use this method, so will it be alright with you? Oh, Cha Hyun recalled what Baek Yun-ho told her about the situation back then. He said that, as all the members of the Korean assault team found themselves in a life-or-death situation, Hunter Seong Jin-Woo suddenly popped up behind him. Is he trying to show me that skill? She quickly swallowed her dry saliva and looked up at Jin-Woo's face that was now much closer than her initial expectations. Sorry about this. Jin-Woo lightly embraced her. He thought that such a light hug wouldn't mean anything to her since he had carried her unconscious frame around inside the ant tunnel. But Cha Hyun's face was rapidly dying in a beet red color. However, she didn't struggle or try to get out of his embrace. His nice scent. While her face was getting progressively redder and redder, Jin-Woo cautiously held her to make sure they wouldn't get separated and finish getting ready. Shadow exchange. Two of them soundlessly got sucked into the shadow beneath their feet. It was right at that moment Yoo Jin-ho opened the door and entered the conference suite. He ran out to the local convenience store to buy some refreshments after thinking that the talk might go on for a bit. Please, drink these while you 2ch. A high orc shadow soldier met Yu Jin-Ho's gaze, and as if he was feeling a bit sheepish over something, scratched the back of his head. The tray in Yu Jin-Ho's hand crashed to the floor, and cups of liquid refreshment shattered from the impact. What the hell? The moment the ground disappeared and they got sucked into the shadow, Jin-Woo looked at Cha-hee falling together at the same time. As I thought, his expectation was on the money. He wondered if the skill shadow exchange worked in this manner while using it a few times in the past. And he was right. The identity of the skill shadow exchange was actually a gate. That theory was proven correct when Cha-hee traveled alongside him through the shadow. The entrance is generated below my feet, and the exit is where the determined coordinates are. And those coordinates would be the location of a shadow soldier. Even though there was a limitation of the 3-hour-long cooldown time, he was still able to create a gate with this skill. If he wanted to, then wouldn't it be possible for him to move to the other side of the planet every 3 hours? Jin-Woo unconsciously swallowed his saliva. Cha-hee quickly spoke to him. I left my weapon back in my car. Oh, you mean that pickaxe? Excuse me. You know, the one you were carrying around back in the Ranka dungeon with high orcs in it. Her face reddened as soon as she remembered a small detail she'd been wanting to forget. And no, my weapon is. She then spotted Jin-Woo giggling to himself and belatedly realized that he was teasing her just now. Cha-hee shifted her gaze towards the storage located within the gymnasium. I'm sure there will be a weapon I can borrow in the storage. A light gleamed within Jin-Woo's eyes after learning of something new. She walked up to the storage and diagonally swiped her hunter license on the electronic lock found on the side of the door. That prompted the storage door to automatically slide open. Rows of not too shabby looking spare weapons were displayed inside the storage. Looking into the interior from a bit of distance away, Jin-Woo was inwardly impressed by the preparedness of the Hunters Association. So, there was even stuff like this inside the association. He wondered where all those high taxes hunters had to fork out over the years ended up, but it looked like they were being put to good use. Cha-hee scanned the displayed items before picking up a sword similar in length to the one she'd been using and exited from the storage. I'm ready. Will that be fine? It's not a sword you've been using before, so wouldn't it feel off in your hands? Cha-hee shook her head. It doesn't really matter what weapon it is. Monsters don't care about what weapons hunters are wielding when they fight us, after all. Those were some wise words. Jin-Woo carried the same opinion as her, so he didn't argue with her there. At the very least, he found her straightforwardness rather likable. So, calling out my soldier is next, right? As if to prove that she wasn't joking about being ready, a sharp, focused aura oozed out of her. Against someone like her, any all-regular soldier would be sliced up into tiny pieces in no time. That's why Jin-Woo called for the best card he could bring out under the current circumstances. Come out. A small portion separated from Jin-Woo's shadow and moved away a couple of steps from him. Then a black knight rose up from the unmoving shadow. The jet black armor in the helm, the red plumage attached to the helm, extending all the way down to his waist. The best sword-wielding shadow soldier in his army. I told her that I'd be summoning the most powerful guy out, but he thought that calling out Baru was a bit too much. Before he was turned into a shadow soldier, Baru was the terrifying creature that nearly drowned the entirety of Korean team members in the pit of pure terror. Hell, even Cha-hee herself almost died from his attack, too. Jin-Woo couldn't bring Baru out when considering the potential mental shock she could suffer after seeing him again. As for Fangs, he might end up destroying the gymnasium, so he was excluded. Mr. Xiang Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo shifted his gaze over to Cha-hee. What are the conditions for victory and defeat? When he heard her icy voice that was cold enough to instantly freeze the listener's heart, his belief began wavering somewhat. Jin-Woo pondered a bit before making his reply. Either my summon is destroyed, or Cha Hunter Nim admits defeat first. Cha-hee briefly nodded her head, then unsheathed the sword she got from the storage. She was only holding a simple, plain magic sword one could buy pretty much anywhere, but even then, the aura oozing out of her was still quite incredible to behold. Yup, she's definitely strong. Jin-Woo could sense it. Her surging aura, after she decided to get serious, was definitely fitting for a woman whose skills were rated as the best even among the rank S hunters. Ygritte also unsheathed his sword. As a matter of fact, he was now holding a longsword each in his hands. Even then, Jin-Woo couldn't help but think that Ygritte would be defeated by her at this rate. But then, wait a sec. Didn't she say that it doesn't really matter what weapon it was, right? Jin-Woo recalled what she said just now and a smile floated up on his lips as he asked her for a small favor. Can you turn around for a second, please? Cha-hee tilted her head for a bit, but didn't complain and turned around as he asked. Using that gap, Jin-Woo summoned the Demon King's longsword out of his inventory and handed it over to Ygritte. Use this by saying that she didn't mind what weapon she used. It could also be interpreted as she didn't mind what weapon her opponent was using. Having been bestowed a sword straight from his sovereign, Ygritte tried to kneel down to express his profound gratitude, but Jin-Woo quickly stopped him. I'm telling you, you don't have to stand on ceremony all the time, you know. If only Iron could learn half of Ygritte's attitude. In any case, the preparation was done, so Jin-Woo called out to Cha Hien again. It's fine now. She turned around and spotted Ygritte now holding a brand new sword that crackled with blue arcs of electricity, which he clearly wasn't holding a minute ago. Soon after Jin-Woo signaled the beginning, Ygritte swung the Demon King's longsword to activate its passive ability as his opening attack. A strand of lightning flew in a straight line at Cha Hien. She flinched for the briefest of brief moments, but then, like an agile cat, she bent her upper body back and evaded the lightning. Without saying anything, Cha Hien gripped the sword tighter in her hands. It was right then. Ygritte rushed towards her at a frightening pace from her front to heed his sovereign's order to bring her down. However, she didn't even blink once and also flung herself forward towards her opponent. The association president was in the middle of going through a report, but then, his gaze abruptly shifted over to the window. There should have been no one inside the gymnasium, but the lights there came on just now. Go-Gun Huey tilted his head slightly, before picking up his phone to speak to his pa. Yes, sir. Did someone book out the gymnasium today? Sir, I confirmed and no one has booked it today. Is that so? Go-Gun Huey covered the phone's receiver and organized his thoughts for a bit, before speaking to his subordinate again. Can you send the CCTV feed from the gymnasium into my office? Yes, sir. Please hold on. Shortly thereafter, the live feed was displayed on the giant TV occupying the entire wall of his office. And that's when he got to see Seong Jin-Woo and Cha Hien hugging each other inside the gymnasium. Stunned by what he saw, Go-Gun Huey hurriedly coughed to clear his throat. He looked over and over again, but it was definitely those two. He then tilted his head again. Did those two people have such a relationship? But then again, the very first person Hunter Cha Hien searched for when she regained consciousness briefly inside the helicopter was none other than Hunter Seong Jin-Woo. It seems that I was very slow on the uptake. A content smile spread on Go-Gun Huey's face as he gazed at the two young people on the TV screen. Both of them requested for their private information to be protected as soon as they got their Rank S licenses. Even then, there was not one person in this country who didn't know Cha Hien, or for that matter, Seong Jin-Woo. So, if two such people wished to spend some quiet time together, there would be no better place than the association's gymnasium after the closing time. I'm sorry about this, but I want you to switch off all the CCTV feed coming from the gymnasium. Sir, but just say that today was the maintenance day in the records. I understand, sir. The giant TV screen in the president's office showing the CCTV feed switched off as soon as he ended the call. Go-Gun Huey took one last look at the gymnasium and returned to perusing the report, a grin still etched on his lips. But it was then. The surface of the water in his cup vibrated softly as he sensed a minute tremor coming from the gymnasium's direction. Go-Gun Huey didn't bother to look at the gymnasium and simply carried on smiling. Indeed, being young is the best. This is. Jin-Woo massaged his aching forehead. It seemed that he had been greatly underestimating Cha Hien's actual skills up until now. Ygritte's strength had been boosted overall by the Demon King's longsword. But in the end, he couldn't win against her skills. Right after Ygritte's left arm flew away from being cut, Jin-Woo ended this match. Even though they would regenerate back to full, he still couldn't stand the sight of his soldiers getting destroyed. This one doesn't count. Didn't you say that you'd bring out the most powerful summon? Cha Hien walked closer and only stopped when she was one step away from Jin-Woo. Was that Black Knight really your strongest summon? She wasn't asking him here. No, it sounded as if she was just trying to confirm what she knew already. Please call out your strongest summon. We agreed to do from that get-go, didn't we? But you may get injured. It's fine. I wanted to fight it at least one more time. Anyway. Jin-Woo's eyes widened from her declaration. Wait, you knew. I saw the video footage. Cha Hien had watched the raid video starring Jin-Woo several times by now. The giant monster that made its appearance during the clip, she definitely remembered seeing that monster shooting out the pillar of flames from somewhere. That summoned creature, that was the High Orc Shaman, the boss of that Ranka dungeon. Am I correct? If that was the case, then the mutated ant monster he hunted down this time would also have become his summoned creature as well. From the word go, she chose to go through the test while thinking of fighting that mutated ant. There is no meaning in a victory like this. She wanted to defeat the summoned creature that used the powers of the mutated ant monster, and thereby get Jin-Woo to acknowledge her true value. He pondered for a little bit, before nodding his head. Baru. Right away, a shadow soldier enshrouded in jet black smoke rose up behind Jin-Woo. Cha-Hien instinctively jumped back and created some distance as soon as she saw Baru's entrance. Back then or now, that guy carried a truly horrendous aura. Jin-Woo got genuinely worried when all color drained out of her face and quickly asked her, "Will this really be fine?" Even if Baru had gotten weaker compared to when he was alive, this guy was originally a killing weapon born solely for the purpose of eliminating hunters. Cha-Hien's lips were squeezed shut in a straight line, as she weightily nodded her head. Baru had been staring at her quietly for a while, before lowering his head to whisper a question to Jin-Woo. "Oh my king, how should I deal with this female?" Cha-Hien must have been unable to hear what Baru was saying, because she showed no particular reaction at all. "Defeat her without injuring her. It shall be done." The former king of the ants and the current shadow soldier turned towards the deeply tense female warrior. Cha-Hien swallowed her dry saliva. She felt goosebumps break out on her skin from the enormous amount of magic energy emitted by her opponent. Mr. Xiang Jin-Woo fought against a creature like this and won. Her eyes that showed no signs of hesitation while fighting against Ygritte were now trembling greatly. Baru was done with the necessary preparation to follow his sovereign's order, and suddenly spat out a mighty screech. Blade-like claws began extending out from the ends of Baru's fingers, so Jin-Woo standing behind him sent over an unhappy glare. "Retract the claws." The high-spirited Baru immediately retracted his claws. Jin-Woo drilled one more instruction into his soldier's head. "If you injure that woman, it won't be nice for you, either. Got that? I shall follow your will." Only after hearing that definite answer from Baru did Jin-Woo declare the start of the second bout. "Begin." Baru was the first to make his move. His sovereign had given him only one order: defeat the enemy without harming her. Baru once stood at the peak of his species, and he knew what the best method to perfectly fulfill that order was. And that would be this: make the opponent lose her will to fight by imprinting the clear gap in power between them in her mind. Baru disappeared from Cha-Hien's view the moment he moved, before reappearing right in front of her nose even before she had the chance to realize it. Cha-Hien's animal-like instinct kicked in even as the astonishment at Baru's speed nearly overwhelmed her, and she swung her sword at her opponent. She followed that up with dozens more. However, Baru stood in the spot and evaded all of her attacks without taking a single step. It was a precise movement that eliminated all necessary motion. He was so bloody quick that afterimages were left behind in his wake. This was the display of an unbridgeable gap in their power levels. "This is impossible." Cha-Hien's eyes shook hard every time she missed. "It can dodge all my attacks at such a close distance without moving its legs once. Just one more time." She took aim at the neck of her opponent and took a swing, but the creature lightly evaded it by leaning back slightly. No matter where she attacked from or how she changed her attacks, her opponent easily dodged them all. How can this be? This thing wasn't even alive anymore. This thing was a summon borrowing the powers of the dead monster, so how could it still be this strong? And also, Mr. Xiang Jin-Woo, who can freely control such a summon, just what? Cha-Hien's movements became a tad dull from the vague fear invading her, and Baru seized upon this opportunity to smack her incoming sword away with the back of his hand, and then pressed his face closer to hers. Cha-Hien froze up on the spot as the stench of death blew right into her face. "This is the end." She inadvertently gasped out the moment those huge mandibles filled up her view. However, the creature didn't crush her head by snapping shut its maws but instead chose to screech out loudly right in front of her face. She was knocked away ungainly from the screech containing his magical energy. Jin-Woo grimaced while watching that. Indeed, there was no way he'd start enjoying the sight of someone else getting knocked around one-sidedly like this. However, she stood back up again and fixed the grip on the sword as if to show that she wasn't giving up at all. Jin-Woo tilted his head. What is she trying to do? The Cha-Hien he knew wasn't a low-class hunter who didn't want to accept the difference between her and her opponent even after confirming the truth with her own eyes. And she's definitely not reckless enough to keep attacking when she knows of the gap, too. In that case, could she still be in possession of one more card up her sleeve? Whatever it is, I hope she's not making an incorrect call. Jin-Woo was mentally linked with Baru, so he could feel how much his soldier was suppressing its killing intent at the moment. On the other hand, Cha-Hien's will remained unyielding, even though she found herself in an absolutely disadvantageous position. He was getting a bad premonition here. Jin-Woo's expression became even more serious as he watched the two of them. On the hand, Baru had failed to understand Cha-Hien's decision. He had displayed their overwhelming gap in power several times by now, So, why hadn't she stopped her challenges yet? The former king of ants, a being who lorded over others at the apex of the food chain, was beginning to get displeased by the human female's stubbornness. The basis of his anger stemmed from the past memory of him being a ruler. How dare! The moment Baru made up his mind, he arrived before Cha Hien in the blink of an eye. He then pressed his face closer to glare straight into her eyes. Any life form still breathing would have immediately realized who was the predator and the prey in this situation just from their gazes meeting like this. It would be a warning from one's primal instinct. Baru planned to awaken that instinct of his opponent and make her lose her will to fight in that manner. But unfortunately, his ploy wasn't as effective as he thought. Just as Jin-Woo had predicted, Cha Hien still held one last trump card to fall back on. The skill, sword dance, one she was most proficient in wielding. Her movements sped up as if she was performing a deadly dance, and the tip of her sword drew splendid arcs in the air. Too bad. Baru used his claws to easily defend against all those smoothly flowing attacks that had no interruptions in between. At the end of the barrage, his expression crumpled unsightly. No more playing around. Baru snatched the sword flying at him with his bare hand and crushed it. She only had half a sword left, but rather than falling into despair, her glare became icy cold. Instead, I have only one last chance. Every single drop of magic energy in her was poured into the broken sword to activate her skill, Blade of Light. The magic energy expenditure for this skill was far too great, and she could only use it as the final hurrah. And for the first time during this fight, she revealed it in its full glory. The Blade of Light shone brilliantly. Baru had lowered his guard for a moment after breaking her sword, and she used that opening to jump into his front and stab the Blade of Light forward. Jin-Woo's eyes widened. Of course, he wasn't worried about Baru. Utterly disregarding his worries, the blade glowing in golden light pierced deeply into Baru's tummy. In that brief moment, Baru's mind spun quickly. This woman is an enemy. It'd not be a problem for him to die. However, if he fell here, then this woman's sword would point towards his sovereign next. It was then an instinct buried deep within all Shadow Soldier's psyche, one designed to activate in times of great distress and override everything else, wiggled back into life. Protect the sovereign. In that moment, inside of Baru's head blanked out into a reset state, and the order Jin-Woo gave him, defeat the enemy without harming her, was wiped away completely. Baru transformed into a terrifying monster in order to protect Jin-Woo. His body ballooned up to a giant proportions. His mandibles split wide open as if he was getting ready to chew on steel, and finally, his claws extended out to resemble a group of sharp blades. Stop. Baru finished getting ready to rip apart his owner's enemy, and swung all 10 of his claws and their sharp edges at his target. Swish. Just before all 10 blades reached Cha Hien, Jin-Woo managed to make it just in time. I told you to stop, didn't I? Jin-Woo stopped both sets of Baru's claws with his bare hands and began glaring at his soldier. Baru met that enraged glare and began shuddering. He quickly leapt back and, while not even bothering to pull that sword of light from his midriff, prostrated flat on the ground and begged for forgiveness. Oh my king, mercy. Jin-Woo knew what this guy was thinking of the moment he was about to act. Hell, the singular thought of protect the sovereign was ringing really loud inside his head, too. Jin-Woo glared at Baru for a little while, before shifting his gaze away. Cha Hien was completely spent and, unable to stand any longer, plopped down to the ground. She knew that she just came face to face with death again during that brief moment. Are you all right? Jin-Woo walked closer. Why were you pushing yourself that hard? I mean, you shouldn't have any reasons to enter my guild while putting yourself through a ringer like this, right? Indeed, this was supposed to be a simple test. More than that, this was a test he cooked up to reject her tactfully. But, to think, she'd be this obsessed about winning, even to the extent of using such a dangerous skill, too. This couldn't be chalked up to her desire to win at all costs. That was why. Could it be? Jin-Woo cautiously asked her, so as to not damage her ego. Are you perhaps interested in me? Excuse me. Cha Hien got flustered and formed a dazed expression of someone getting hit in the back of her head. Jin-Woo tilted his head. That wasn't it, either. But then, Cha Hien carefully reorganized her thoughts and corrected her answer. Yes, I think so. Within the United States Hunter Bureau, the director was feeling rather unhappy after receiving the news of Hunter Seong Jin-Woo's recruitment ending in failure. Instead of getting a report, he summoned the deputy director to the conference chamber. The deputy director brought Madame Selner with him. Explain what happened back there, the director asked even before they had the chance to sit down. This was the first time since the founding of the Hunter Bureau that their scouting offer, accompanied by Madame Selner no less, had been rejected by the subject. The deputy stood up with a darkened expression and lowered his head. I'm truly sorry, sir. I didn't call you here for your apologies, Michael. Madame Selner was able to observe Hunter Seong Jin-Woo. What was the result? The director knew how her power operated, so the result of her observation was as important as the result of the recruitment itself. Hunter Seong Jin-Woo is. The deputy licked his dried-up lips from tension and continued on. Is apparently one of the kings. What? The director jumped up from his seat. Of all the powerful hunters she had met over the years, she described only 3 people as kings. And all 3 of them were powerful enough to shake the world by the scruff of its neck, too. Quite literally, they were the zenith of hunters. And the man named Seong Jin-Woo had to be included in that list now, as well. Does that mean Hunter Seong Jin-Woo possesses the level of power equal to other special authority rank hunters? Strangely enough, she promptly shook her head. Excuse me. Frowns formed on the director's forehead. The deputy could amply understand how his boss must be feeling right about now. He, too, had displayed a similar reaction back when he heard the exact same answer, after all. Madame Selner let out a long sigh. Looks like I'll have to explain myself a little. Her talk began from those words. First of all, by staring into the eyes of the awakened, Madame Selner could sense the passageway connecting said awakened to the other side. However, she said that there were certain awakened who were receiving so much incredible power from the other side that it ends up resembling a blinding flood of light. Instead, these were precisely the kings she talked about. So, what is different about Hunter Seong Jin-Woo, then? He doesn't have a passageway. Madame shivered in fear again. When I looked into his eyes, the darkness within him was staring back at me. Oh my God, he was the darkness itself. The deputy director refuted this immediately. But he has helped out a lot of people during his tenure as a hunter, and I can't see him as someone as evil as you describe him to be. If Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was indeed a vicious, evil individual, he'd have immediately killed the 2 agents who pointed guns at him where they stood. However, he just let that slide without caring too much about it. Madame shook her head. I wasn't talking about whether Hunter Seong Jin-Woo was a good or evil man. Deputy Director. The light shining in her eyes was determined. No, I'm talking about the origin of his power. The director had been listening to her with his hands pressed below his chin until then, but he finally raised his voice. There's no mistaking that he's a powerful hunter, yes. Madame nodded her head. Hunter Seong Jin-Woo, he's not borrowing someone else's power. He only relies on the power residing within him, so he's not restricted by the passageway. Which means, there's no limit to his power. The deputy director muttered absently before breaking into an abrupt shudder. He couldn't even begin to imagine how absurd the level of power gushing out without any limit could potentially be. The director fell into a deep thought after he heard both of his guests, and a short while later he nodded his head, evidently having made his mind up over something. Madam, thank you for your hard work. After seeing Madame Selner off, the director headed down to the underground floors of the Hunter Bureau with his deputy in tow. Director, where are we going? 9th basement floor. Isn't that where we store old records? We have something else secured there besides the records. The director watched as the number on the elevator's display panel steadily decreased and continued on. If we can't rely on Madame Selner's power, then we should use a different method to bring him in. That man was still so young, and he possessed unfathomable power. If Hunter Seong Jin-Woo indeed possessed incredible power just as Madame Selner had alluded to, then it no longer mattered whether that was the power of light or the power of darkness. A knife you picked up to protect yourself would look like a deadly weapon from someone else's perspective. Do you still recall the very first rank S gate ever to appear? Of course. How could anyone forget the worst dungeon break in history that destroyed a portion of the western United States? The American government summoned in the world's most powerful hunters with an unbelievably huge amount of reward on offer, and eventually, they succeeded in killing the boss-level monster that emerged from that rank S gate. However, only 5 survived that encounter, meaning just a single monster managed to kill dozens of the best hunters out there. Without their sacrifice, the nation of the United States of America might have ceased to exist altogether. That was why the American government bestowed the 5 remaining saviors the rights equaling that of the country itself, and that's where the term special authority rank originated from. The director mouthed the name of the monster that brought upon one of the worst tragedies in the history of mankind. Kamish the dragon. Didn't the mage-type hunters say that Kamish meant an undying flame? They entered the deepest room on the floor, and the director opened the safe found in there. And that's when a single rune stone, under a heavy guard and being monitored constantly, revealed itself. The deputy director flinched in surprise. In that case, could that thing be? Your guess is correct. The director placed his hand on top of the reinforced glass shielding the rune stone and formed a smile. This runestone came out from that Kamish's corpse. 2 of the Special Authority rank hunters settled down in the US after the end of the Kamish raid. In a way, they were the gifts that Kamish managed to deliver to the US. To avoid another calamity like this, the Americans established the Hunter Bureau and focused all their might on improving the strengths of the hunters. Around 8 years passed by since then, simply because no mage-type hunters were among the surviving Special Authority rank hunters. Kamish's runestone was tucked away in this cold underground storage beneath the Hunter Bureau, waiting for a new owner to come along. The director formed a meaningful smile as he peered into the glass case. Kamish will present us with yet another invaluable gift to our beautiful country very soon. Hyungnim, I heard that it might be difficult for us to get the permit for the gate that appeared yesterday. The first thing that the chairman of the Night Order Guild, Park Jong-soo, did after arriving for work was to harden his expression. What was that? The vice chair Jeong Yun-ti hurriedly explained himself. The result from the association folks measuring that thing apparently came out higher than they expected. What? It's a rank S. No, not that. They say it's a rank A, but right at the top of the scale. Gimme a freaking break, man. Really now? If it was a rank S gate, then they could have given up on it without hesitation. The Night Order Guild didn't have a single rank S hunter in their midst, so it wouldn't make much sense for them to attempt clearing a rank S gate, after all. If we don't get involved, then the folks from the Shining Star would definitely show up. The Shining Star Guild from the district of Hanam. Fine blood vessels bulged within Park Jong-soo's eyes when he heard that name. You want to gift the big gate hovering right in front of our house to the hands of Ma Dong-wook? No, I'm just saying, Hyungnim. I won't let that happen, even over my dead body. If I think about it objectively, then I should give up on this one. But then again, he should consider the fate of the Night Order as good as finished if the story of them giving up on a rank A gate gets around. Just which newbie would want to join a guild that didn't have a single rank S hunter and couldn't even deal with a rank A gate? In that case, Hyungnim, how about forming an alliance with another guild? Park Jong-soo shook his head. Who'd want to form an alliance with us when they already know we can't go at it alone and need help? If allying with another guild is a problem, then how about working with a freelancer? The 2 men's heads snapped in unison towards the direction of the woman's voice, coming from their side. It was from the rank A healer charged with mending the elite raid team, Jeong Yi-rim. The healer was given a lot of say in the matters of a raid. And if that healer just so happened to be a rank A possessing various skills, then there was no need to even mention that. However, as the fate of the Night Order Guild was hanging in the balance here, Park Jong-soo couldn't easily hide his troubled expression. We want to go inside the hardest rank A gate, so how could a single freelancer help? But then, Park Jong-soo stopped his words right there. Because he just remembered a certain someone in the middle of his own speech. A man capable of sweeping away rank S monsters all alone, never mind rank S. Unable to suppress his excitement anymore, Park Jong-soo shot up from his seat. If Mr. Seong Jin-Woo joins us, then. That man easily brushed off a monster that the combined might of the Korean rank S hunters couldn't do anything about. If he chose to participate, then the safety of the raid team members was as good as 100% guaranteed. What is Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim doing right now? Both Jeong Yi-rim, who originally came up with the idea, and Jeong Yun-ti quietly listening from the side, shook their heads. Since he cleared the gate appearing in the middle of the road not too long ago, he's gone pretty quiet nowadays. Jeong Yun-ti recalled seeing Seong Jin-Woo on one of the TV news broadcasts recently, and pulled his phone out. Should I find out the contact number for Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim, Hyungnim? No, don't bother. Put your phone down. Do you think you should try to solve something this important over a phone call? No, we gotta meet up with him and discuss it face to face. Let's go up north. That evening, Cha-hyun was lying on her bed with sheets pulled right up over her head. But she was writhing around in great distress at the moment. Why did I go and say, I think so? Just why? Wasn't that the exact same thing as confessing? She wildly kicked the sheets away, and finally stopped moving only after a thought popped up into her head out of the blue. Then, how was she to decipher Mr. Seong Jin-Woo's reply? Then, she wanted to quickly escape from that situation and told him that she'd think about it before leaving in a hurry. But simply from recalling that moment caused such distress that her thought process ground to a complete halt almost immediately. Her face blushed from the memories she remembered yet again. Back when she looked into the maddened eyes of the enlarged summoned creature, she predicted her unavoidable death. She felt absolute terror. This was the fate of the prey. Cha-hyun even squeezed her eyes shut as 10 claws descended upon her from both sides. But, then, she felt the warmth coming from her back. At the same time, a familiar scent gently wrapped all around her. Cha-hyun cautiously opened her eyes and looked behind her. and she found Jin-Woo standing there, busy glaring with angry eyes at the summoned creature while stopping the claws with his bare hands. It was true that her heart skipped a beat in that moment. But then, wasn't it patently unfair to ask a question like that in that sort of a situation? No, wait. Cha-hee shook her head hard as if to shake off all the distracting thoughts. Even if he asked her like that, she shouldn't have answered him truthfully. He might start seeing me as a strange person. After all, even though she knew she shouldn't, her lips parted on their own. Maybe because her mind felt more relaxed when she was around Hunter Seong Jin-Woo, she ended up revealing a side to him that she always kept hidden. It was as if she wasn't herself anymore. As if I wasn't myself. Those words sounded rather familiar for some reason. Where could it have been from? She could vaguely remember hearing a similar expression from somewhere. It was then, a piece of memory once erased from her mind brushed past her brain. Please, pass it on. Cha-hee quickly bolted upright. She finally recalled that voice, a voice that seemed to slowly fade away to the other side, just like a waking dream, even though it couldn't have been that long ago. Please, pass this message on. Cha-hee did her very best to remember the contents of the voice as well as the owner of it. The full scope of the memory, blurry and indistinct as if a thick veil of fog was covering it, slowly regained its former glory. Please, pass on the message that he needs to be wary. I met with Hunter Min Byung-gu back when she lost her consciousness and was being dragged into the endless void. Hunter Min Byung-gu appeared out of nowhere and pulled her back by her wrist. She felt momentarily displeased from her peaceful rest being interrupted back then. She remembered being puzzled by the black armor covering the entirety of Hunter Min Byung-gu. Only his face was visible outwardly. Even that face seemed quite sad for some reason, which was unlike his usual self. As the memories of those moments slowly crept back into her mind, Cha-hee felt a chill run down her spine. Hunter Min Byung-gu spoke to her, his expression barely holding back his tears. Please pass on the message that he needs to be wary of the power he possesses. After ending the shower, Jin-Woo stood before the bathroom window. He sure looked okay from where he was standing, but to think that he was so good looking that a beauty like Cha-hee felt enough interest to try switching guilds. Am I really that good looking? Jin-Woo peered deeper into the mirror, and a smirk leaked out of his mouth. He wasn't planning to drown in narcissism even if no one told him to. He was confident of only one thing about himself, and that would be his taut muscles, getting progressively firmer through repeated daily quest routines, as well as his height that suddenly grew up much higher than before, probably due to the influence of the system. That was about it, meaning all he had was his body and not much else. As for his face, well, minus his sharper than normal eyes, wouldn't it be on the level of an average man commonly seen on the streets? It was at this point that he noticed something. Hold on. Jin-Woo's expression became serious as he stared into the mirror. He leaned his head slightly to the side and took an even closer look than before. The Jin-Woo of the mirror's reflection and the Jin-Woo of reality stared at each other for a long while. A strange light flickered in Jin-Woo's eyes. His gaze swept all over his face, and as he thought, he really did change. Those small scars, spots and nicks that couldn't be seen normally and needed to be looked at really close, had all disappeared from his face even before he had time to notice it. Is this because of the will to recover buff? Hey, sis, how do I look to you? What do you mean? Like, my appeal as a man? Jin-Ah furrowed her brows. And where did you find your baseless confidence from? Because you're still the same stay-at-home oppa in my eyes, you know. Alright, thanks for that. Jin-Woo grinned and pinched her cheek lightly, and she too threw a rather sharp kick to his shin as a retaliation. Of course, the one jumping around in pain was Jin-Ah. You forgot what kind of a person your oppa was. Can you even study properly with that head of yours? What was that? Jin-Ah pouted and narrowed her eyes at him. I was ranked first place in the mock test in the entire school, I'll have you know. Jin-Woo really enjoyed his sister's reaction and had a hard time swallowing back his laughter. One of the best things about having your family around was that, even if you changed, they still treated you the same with exactly the same attitude as before. Jin-Woo used the towel to rub his wet hair and walked past Jin-Ah. Work hard. You too, Appa. Just before he slipped into his room, though, he remembered something and looked behind him. All right, I'm thinking of creating a guild soon. Oh, Jin-Ah's expression brightly and her eyes sparkled brilliantly as well. Appa, are you going to be called a chairman from now on, too? If it all works out, what's the name of the guild? That's what I wanted to hear your opinion on. Oh, what is it? What is it? Jin-Woo cautiously asked his little sister, busy looking at him with eyes full of expectations. What do you think of Solo Play Guild? The answer sounded the same, but its nuance was rather a lot different than the one that came before. If she was kidding around just now, then she was dead serious this time. What's wrong? You think it's weird? Appa, why are you naming your guild like that? Because I like moving around solo. It does sound like you, but still, isn't it a bit strange to name your guild like that? Why? Isn't your ability summoning out those black armored soldiers? Yeah, so, if you get technical about it, you aren't fighting alone, right? Now that he heard her opinion, that made some sense. Jin-Woo nodded his head. I may think of it as just another one of my skills, but it won't look that way to other people, is that it? Indeed, she had a point there. This guild might end up accompanying him for the rest of his life, so he wanted to give it a name that best represented who he was. And that's why he went with solo play, but now, if the true meaning doesn't come across all that well, it'll be useless. What could be another term that could describe him the best? Jin-Woo asked his sister's opinion again. How about Ajin Guild? Ajin? Jin-Ah mouthed the name for a bit, before asking him back with a smile. I kinda like it, 'cause it sounds like my name but flipped around. But what does it even mean? Only he could tread on this road. And it was a name he wanted to give to the guild that would grow alongside him. Oh, Jin-Ah came up with the best praise she could think of. You know, that doesn't sound bad at all. Next day, Jin-Woo went to the office armed with the new guild name. Hey, it's about the guild's name. Yu Jin-Ho had been in the office since early morning, working. When he heard the new name from Jin-Woo, a brilliant smile formed on his face. That is an excellent name, Hyung-nim. Didn't they say that a swan floating elegantly on water was kicking furiously under the surface? Yu Jin-Ho had been feeling as desperate as that old saying. Whatever it is, everything will be fine as long as it's not solo play. He imagined it so many times already. And that would be him introducing himself as hello, I'm Yu Jin-Ho, vice chairman of the Solo Play Guild. That seriously tormented him. He couldn't be sure of why, but a corner of his heart ached every time he imagined himself saying those words. However, how could he dare to rebel against a name that Hyung-nim had worked so hard to come up with? He resigned himself to that fate, but then, a heaven-sent opportunity came knocking in his way. Hyung-nim, let's go with that as our guild's name. Jin-Woo made his decision after receiving his partner's genuine consent this time. Okay, so we decided on the guild's name, finally. Yu Jin-Ho began crying out in elation inwardly after hearing Jin-Woo make that declaration. Meanwhile, the latter rubbed his chin and muttered out, the remaining issue is the last founding member slot, isn't it? Oh, that. Hyung-nim. Yeah, what happened to Cha-hee and Hunter Nim yesterday? I don't think it'll work out with Hunter Cha. She's not exactly who I've been looking for. Hyuk. Yu Jin-Ho hastily swallowed a shocked gasp. He expected his Hyung-nim to hold a high standard. But to think that he'd not be satisfied with a hunter on Cha-heen's level. Hunter Cha-heen was a rank S, she was still very young. Her records were excellent, and to top them all off, she was beautiful as well. No matter from which angle, she was pretty much perfect. At least, from the perspective of an average Joe, that was. However, would the word average even apply to his Hyung-nim? But, I don't think anyone will be better than Hunter Cha-heen among the rest of the applicants, though. Excuse me, Hyung-nim. What kind of a person are you looking for, anyway? Someone with a hunter license who doesn't care much about the guild's activity but we can still place our trust in. Yu Jin-Ho thought up of a person meeting the criteria perfectly right away. Isn't that? It was then. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the office's entrance. Park Jong-soo recognized Jin-Woo first and formed a bright smile. And Park Jong-soo, the master of the Night Order. Jin-Woo nodded his head in acceptance. Indeed, he thought he had seen this man's face from somewhere before. Even if he wasn't all that interested, he'd still recognize a master of one of the 5 major guilds in South Korea. By the way, what brings the representatives from the Night Order to Seoul like this, if I may ask? Park Jong-soo picked one out of the many online news articles and then played the video clip embedded in it. Hey, look at that. Over there. Are you filming this? Wow, how is that even possible? How can a gate be that huge? The video footage, obviously taken by a civilian, contained the crowd's scared voices as its BGM. But that was understandable. The gate in the video was just nonsensically too large. It was taller than a 10-story building, even. This particular gate was so big that it managed to terrify even those citizens who were now pretty much numbed by the smaller gates popping up almost everywhere without warning these days. The size of a gate and its ranking don't always line up, but Park Jong-soo ended the video playback and further explained himself. As befitting its nonsensical size, it's also apparently busy dumping out a massive amount of magic energy as well. Jin-Woo's eyes began gleaming from this rather interesting piece of news. Is it a rank S? We've been told that it hasn't reached the rank of unable to measure, but just below the threshold, apparently. It's supposed to be the largest gate to ever appear in Busan, meaning, although it was nominally a rank A, it was far closer to being a rank S instead. If that's the case, I can expect a fair bit of experience points, can't I? In contrary to Jin-Woo's heart quietly gearing up to pump even faster, Park Jong-soo's voice sounded quite bitter as he carried on. As you can see from those headlines, the association doesn't want to issue us the raid permit. Is it because it'll be too dangerous? Our guild lacks a rank S hunter, as you might have heard. Actually, I believe that we'll get the raid permit for this gate if you decide to cooperate with our assault team, Hunter Nim. Jin-Woo crossed his arms and leaned against the back of his chair. Before his pondering could get any deeper, though, Park Jong-soo hurriedly added on. Of course, we will definitely make sure not to treat you poorly. With a smile still etched on his face, he pulled out the prepared contract. We will hand over 20% of the revenue generated from this dungeon. He was saying that one of the major guilds was prepared to submit 2/10 of the potential profit from a gate to a freelancer. Now that was an unimaginable offer for a regular hunter. Now typically, a rank S hunter would only command around 10% of the overall revenue when a large guild raided a dungeon. But the Night Order was offering up double of that norm. As Park Jong-soo had said, this certainly wasn't a poor treatment by any stretch of the imagination. Unfortunately, Jin-Woo's thoughts were a bit different. 50-50 split. Park Jong-soo's hand flinched momentarily as it was about to pull out a pen that was supposed to help Jin-Woo sign the contract. If you agree to consider me not as a freelancer but as a guild, then I shall cooperate with you. Jin-Woo made sure that declaration was heard loud and clear. An earthquake erupted within Park Jong-soo's eyes at the suggestion of splitting the revenue in half. However, he didn't have any means to come out as strongly as Jin-Woo here. It was not an exaggeration to say that the fate of his Night Order guild depended on this raid. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo was inwardly clicking his tongue. I mean, 20% is just not on, don't you think so? He wasn't trying to exploit the urgent situation the Night Order guild found themselves in. But, when calculated from all possible angles, the most sensible ratio of splitting the loot was 50-50. Even if they are the elites of the Night Order, are they as good as my shadow soldiers? Either in number or even in quality, they were incomparable. Not only that, his side even included a rank S hunter, too. In that case, how about 40-60? Apologies, but I'm not trying to negotiate with the Night Order guild here. Park Jong-soo fell into deep thought. I thought things would work out easily enough because he's still young and looks friendly, but I see now that he is no pushover. But that made sense. He was someone that not even the combined might of South Korea's rank S hunters could defeat. After a lengthy bout of deep deliberation, Park Jong-soo cautiously raised his voice. All right, we will accept. In return, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim, can you take on the boss monster by yourself? Park Jong-soo's expression became somber as he resolved himself to at least get this much out of the negotiation. The boss-level monsters were responsible for the majority of losses suffered in dungeons, and to minimize the potential losses to his raid team, Park Jong-soo made an aggressive move and asked Jin-Woo to deal with the boss monster instead. In order to hide a smirk trying to break out of his lips, Jin-Woo lifted the hand previously supporting his chin right up below his nose and covered the entirety of his mouth. Then formed an impressive frown. He wanted to look as if he was giving it a very serious consideration here. And it worked wonders. Park Jong-soo forgot all about the passage of time and solely concentrated on Jin-Woo's decision, as his hands were soaked in sweat. After a long while, Jin-Woo let out a soft sigh, and then, all right, we'll do it that way. It's been some time since the gate first appeared, so at the latest, we need to start the raid tomorrow. Then, I'll see you tomorrow. Park Jong-soo stopped packing his stuff and hurriedly made a suggestion. Instead of that, how about we travel south together in our car? Since they were going to meet again tomorrow anyway, wouldn't it be more efficient to move around together instead of making a promise like this? He sneaked a glance at the circular-shaped shadow crawling away on the floor and came up with a suitable excuse. I already made a prior arrangement for this evening, so it'll be difficult for me to go with you. But don't worry, I'll definitely make it in time. The shadow, it just moved. From that side to this side. Park Jong-soo froze up for a second, before he stood straight back up and glared at Jeong Yun-ti. Hey, Yun-ti, are you drunk right now? Sensing the atmosphere had suddenly gotten a bit chilly all of a sudden, Jeong Yun-ti forgot what he wanted to say and rubbed below his nose with his index finger. I had a couple of beer as an appetizer back in the motorway service station. Hyung-nim, didn't I say that you gotta be more mindful when we're trying to conduct official business? I'm sorry, Hyung-nim. Jeong Yun-ti bowed to Park Jong-soo, before bowing to Jin-Woo as well. I'm sorry, Hunter Nim. This guy here, he means well, but he also sometimes spews out nonsense with a couple of drinks in him. I apologize if we ended up making a fuss. No, it's fine. I mean, shadows can move around sometimes. And so, as the meeting was coming to an end in a friendly atmosphere, Jin-Woo's phone resting on the conference table suddenly vibrated. Who's this? He took a look at the caller, but he couldn't recognize the number. Excuse me, I'll have to answer this call. Yes. Jin-Woo asked for his guest's understanding like a gentleman and made his exit from the conference suite. After making his way out of the conference suite, Jin-Woo tapped on the answer icon. Then, a familiar voice came out of the phone's speaker. Son. After confirming who it was, Jin-Woo felt rather relieved but at the same time, felt a bit rueful as well. Mom, did you buy a new phone? NG. I wanted to hear your voice as soon as I got it, so I called you abruptly like this. I hope that I didn't interrupt you while you were doing something important. Jin-Woo glanced at the conference suite with two people from the Night Order Guild still inside and smirked slightly. Nah, it's fine, Mom. That's a relief. By the way, I don't know if I bought the right phone. I'm just not used to this sort of things. Did you go to the store alone? Why didn't you take Jin-Ah along with you? She's busy with her studies, so I shouldn't disturb her. It'd been nice if Mom thought of herself instead of her children every once in a while. Jin-Woo ended the call with his mom and sighed softly under his breath. However, why did he feel a bit disappointed when he found out that the call was from his mom? What was I waiting for? Jin-Woo smirked to himself and pocketed the phone, before raising his head up. Renewed vigor was gleaming brightly in his eyes. He was about to breathe in the dungeon air again tomorrow, all thanks to the nice guys of the Night Order coming to visit him like this. A rank A gate that's close to being a rank S, is it? It felt as if he hadn't cut loose and went all out in a long while now. Hadn't it been a week already since the end of the Jeju Island raid? Besides entering that rank B gate, he hadn't done anything worthy of mention lately. The cream of the Night Order's crop had gathered in one place. They were all in a buzz right now from anticipation and excitement. It couldn't be helped, though. They would probably have had to take a big gamble with their lives by going on this raid. And if it turned into a red gate, then avoiding a complete annihilation would have been impossible. But then, Hunter Seong Jin-Woo agreed to join them on such a raid. I should have just brought him along with us yesterday. Park Jong-soo confirmed the time through his watch. It was 5 minutes before 11 in the morning. According to their schedule, the raid was supposed to get underway in 5 minutes. It was a little wonder that he was suffocating from anxiety, since the promised person hadn't shown up yet. Without him, this raid couldn't even get underway. The Hunters Association immediately issued the raid permit as soon as the Night Order let them know of Hunter Seong Jin-Woo's participation. There are 3 minutes remaining. Park Jong-soo pulled his phone out of sheer anxiousness, but he pocketed it again after mustering up a superhuman level of patience. It'd be a bit rude to call someone who said he'd be here shortly about 10 minutes ago, now wouldn't it? However, he couldn't sense anyone possessing great aura approaching this location, nor did he receive the call from Jin-Woo saying that he arrived at the vicinity. Park Jong-soo looked for something else to chew on instead of his innards, and eventually settled on a cigarette. Just where are you, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nayam? Around the same time, Jin-Woo was stepping outside his apartment. He was kitted out in easy-to-move clothing and a pair of sneakers. He looked at his watch, and it said 1 minute before 11 a.m. He raised his head up to see an overcast, gloomy sky. I wonder, did Jin-Ah take an umbrella with her in the morning? Such thoughts only lasted for a short while. Okay, time to make my way there, then. Jin-Woo pulled up the hood to hide his face as a smile crept up on his lips. First of all, he activated stealth, and then shadow exchange. He immediately swapped his position with the soldier currently in the shadow state. Meanwhile, somewhere in Jin-Ah's high school, 3 male students and their faces were currently full of unhappiness at being asked to run an errand for their art teacher. Isn't this clearly exploitation of labor force? Yeah, I wonder about that myself. I mean, why are we doing something that guy was supposed to do it himself in the first place? The male students continued to complain bitterly as they unlatched the bulky lock of the second art classroom, currently serving as their school's storage unit. Look at all this dust. The thick coating of dust befitting a disused, forgotten storage greeted the trio of students. Several worn art supplies, pieces of paintings thrown away by their original owners, and plaster statues once used for sketch exercises lay discarded in this place. Hey, how many of these plaster statues were we supposed to take with us? There are 6 of them here, so it must be 6. Arg, come on. That means we have to come back here again. Why don't you carry 4 of them at the same time, then? The male students rolled their sleeves up in order to carry the plaster figures away. But then, the student picking up the dusty figure tucked away at the deepest corner ended up discovering something else. After hearing his surprised-sounding voice, his friends quickly walked over to take a look. Isn't this? There was a large hole in the wall. It was a gate about the size of an adult human. The biggest student among the trio smirked after taking a look at the gate. And here I was, wondering what was up. The male student pressed his hand on the surface of the gate and carried on. A closed gate like this one is safe. Only hunters can go inside, and the things inside can't come out, either. It was then. A crack suddenly formed on the surface of the gate, and at the same time, a hand shot out to grab the head of the male student. The male student struggled fiercely to get out of the grip, but the hand didn't even budge an inch. And then, accompanying the sound of a hard surface of a fruit shattering into pieces, blood splattered all over the dust-filled storage. Jun Seok-ah. And, as the two blood-soaked male students screamed out, the black curtain covering up the entrance of the gate shattered like glass, and the monsters trapped inside began pouring out. Orcs were natural-born hunters. Their level of intelligence fell some way short of that of humans, but they easily exceeded humanity when it came to tracking and hunting prey weaker than they were. And now, the doorway had been shattered. The wall blocking the dungeon from the rest of the world was gone, and these hunters began pouring out from the gate. The orcs shoved away the annoying corpses of the high school boys and scanned their surroundings. Sniff, sniff. These hunters had been trapped inside the dark dungeon for the whole week, quietly waiting for this day. It was rather obvious that they would get excited from all the smell of blood and flesh coming from their surroundings. However, this group was merely advanced scouts. Even if their blood was boiling, they weren't supposed to act as they pleased. Dozens of their brethren were waiting impatiently for their reports just beyond the roundish doorway. These orcs looked around and spotted straight walls with many doors and windows. The orc in charge of the advanced scouts immediately realized that they were standing inside a complicated artificial structure like a castle. Its nostrils twitched. There were two choices here to make. 1. Leave this castle and kill every prey they could find with utter impunity. Or, kill every human found within this castle and turn it into a fortress, and then commence with their hunting in earnest. There was no need to even consider which one was the safer choice. The leader orc ordered its underling, "Summon our brothers. First, we cleanse this place completely." There was a sizable crowd of people gathered in the coastline of Gwang and Rai. Even though the weather was overcast and gloomy, there was this one thing that made these people show up here in morbid fascination. And that would be the gigantic gate floating above the beach. Looking at it for real now, it kinda looks bigger, doesn't it? He could see the gate right in front of his eyes that looked way bigger than the one from the video clips. The amount of magic energy leaking out of that thing was as serious as what the association had told the Night Order Guild, too. What kind of monsters will I find inside? A smile unconsciously bloomed on his lips. Besides that nonsensically huge gate, though, everything else looked the same, more or less. Just like how it'd be with raids being taken on by other guilds, there were two groups of low-ranked hunters nearby. That's the retrieval team, and that's the mining team. And the old saying said that you'd see as much as you knew. He could easily tell apart their roles through the attire and their equipment. This was indeed all thanks to participating in the raids of the Hunters Guild in the past. He really came. It's Mr. Seong Jin-Woo. The elite hunters began gathering around after hearing Park Jong-soo's call sign, and began forming bright expression after they recognized Jin-Woo. Hunter Nim. The Jeju Island raid was really amazing. How do you summon those black soldiers? Wait a sec, are they even summons? Will you be taking the lead in today's raid, Mr. Seong Jin-Woo? Just as Jin-Woo was feeling progressively lost from the outpouring of all these questions. Stop. Will you just stop? Healer Jeong-hee Rim, responsible for coming up with the idea of bringing Jin-Woo in the first place, pushed aside other hunters and stepped up to the front. Why are you trying to trouble Seong Hunter Nim to this degree? You aren't some country bumpkins either, so why? Her eyes glaring at her wayward colleagues were as sharp as a pair of blades. A high-ranked healer was comparable to one's own mother in a way, because she was responsible for the raid team's overall well-being. The team members had to swallow their dissatisfaction and keep their mouths shut, as if they were being scolded by their mother. Jeong-hee Rim formed a grin. She then airily spun around and extended her hand to Jin-Woo for a handshake. I'm the main healer of the Night Order's elite assault team, Jeong. Rim. It's a pleasure to meet you. She formed a soft smile with her eyes and continued on. I don't know about others, but seeing that you're about to lead the team, and the fact that I'm the main healer, we should be at least on the same page before we start, yes. Jin-Woo avoided meeting her ulterior motive-filled eyes and looked at Park Jong-soo instead. You haven't explained to them already. Oh, that. Well, Park Jong-soo scratched the back of his head as if he was embarrassed about something. My schedule had been just too tight, you see. I was so busy with going through all the formalities and summoning these guys out here that I've ended up forgetting about it. I, Park Jong-soo, will take the lead for today's raid. Chairman, it's you again. But we have Hunter Seong Jin-Woo here, so why? Is it okay to even do that? Park Jong-soo was a tanker at the very top of the rank A, so it was definitely not a strange occurrence to have him lead a team. Excluding those times that he couldn't participate due to his condition being less than ideal, the majority of the raids happened under Park Jong-soo's leadership. However, didn't they have a rank S hunter among the team now? The strongest hunter present taking up the lead. This was one of the commonly accepted rules in raiding a dungeon. Park Jong-soo quickly offered up an explanation for the sake of his confused teammates. Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim will take up the role of guarding our rear and will ensure our safety during the raid itself. Watch the assault team from the back and take care of the safety of the team members. This was Park Jong-soo's demand. This was for the safety of the team, of course, but also for the sake of the guild's honor as well. It's the ogre, somewhat different from Jin-Woo's own premonition. The assault team was greeted by huge trouble from the entrance instead. It's the twin-head ogre. Everyone, be careful. A monster that would typically appear as a boss in other high-ranked dungeons was standing in the entrance, its bloodshot eyes glaring at the hunters. A twin-head ogre was about twice the size of a regular ogre, but it was difficult to quantify how many times greater the creature's powers were. If it were any other regular assault team that had to face off against a twin-head ogre in a dungeon, they would have been utterly frightened out of their senses and have tried to escape right away. But, let's go. It was a different story with the elites of the Night Order. Park Jong-soo the tanker raised his shield up and rushed towards the ogre. Slam! The impact force actually shook the interior of the dungeon. However, Park Jong-soo activated his skill in time to balloon up his muscle mass and managed to endure against the incredible physical strength of the twin-head ogre without being brought down to his knees. Hyung Nim, I'm fine. Then, I'm coming, too. The sub-tanker, Jeong Yun-T, stood next to Park Jong-soo, succeeding in his mission to get the ogre's attention locked firmly onto himself. Park Jong-soo yelled out loudly, veins in his neck standing up. Attack. With that, the counter-offensive of the Night Order commenced. Arrows, magic spells, swords, and spears rained down on the twin-head ogre. The twin-head ogre became agitated and began rampaging around. However, Park Jong-soo didn't give the monster a chance to divert its attention elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jeong Yun-T quickly ran over and defended the others whenever they were targeted by the ogre. Just now, Jeong Yun-T defended against the ogre's kick and was shoved back greatly as 2 lions were gouged on the ground by his feet. Thanks to him, though, other hunters suffered almost no damage at all. The body of the ogre was gradually shaved away due to the combined attacks of the damage dealers. It was a spectacular teamwork. From this spectacle alone, Jin-Woo could now understand why the Night Order Guild managed to lock down on the position of Yeongnam District's #1 for such a long time. Eventually, the ogre fell backwards, bubbles foaming in its mouths. Thud! It was the moment when a boss-level monster fell without injuring a single person. A perfect victory, in other words. We'll stay here for a bit longer to recheck our equipment before advancing forward. Ah, okay, please do. Jin-Woo nodded his head. While he only needed to drink potions to refill his magic energy or stamina, other hunters clearly suffered from a physical limit to their magical energy reserve or fatigue. It seems likely that this raid won't be easy, unfortunately. To think, we'd end up running into a twin-head ogre right from the start. He rubbed his chin before turning to look at Jin-Woo with a grin. Do you know what the nickname of a twin-head ogre is, by any chance? Jin-Woo shook his head, and the older man replied as if he expected that answer. It's the Gravekeeper. Did that nickname come about because it was such a powerful monster that killed a lot of people? However, Park Jong-soo's explanation was far off Jin-Woo's estimations. The thing is, the older man cast his gaze deeper into the cavern's interior. An ominous aura seemed to be oozing out from the other side of the cavern, still enshrouded in darkness, at least in his eyes. When you meet one as the boss of a dungeon, it's fine. But when you run into one right at the beginning, then well, you'll find that this dungeon. Park Jong-soo sounded worried as he finished his sentence. This dungeon is full of undead monsters. An urgent call came through to the Hunters Association emergency hotline. The caller's voice belonged to a young teenage girl. Is this the association? The call center employee heard the scared sobbing coming from the other side of the line as soon as the call got connected, and realized something was wrong. Yes, it is. Please speak. I'm in, my school, but there are monsters outside. Outside? Where are you making this call from? I'm hiding. I was with my friend, but my friend, I'm in the bathroom. Her sobbing meant that her words were constantly being cut off and it was hard to carry on a conversation. However, the call center employee was experienced enough to piece together those stuttering words and figured out what this girl was trying to say. Immediately, an urgent message was sent to the association's main building. How many monsters are there? Are they any near you right now? I don't know, I really don't know. I hear screams. Sob, sob. I can hear so many screams. Sob, am I going to die? Please calm down and listen to my voice. This employee knew very well from his extensive experience about how weak-kneed humans could get when faced with life-threatening situations. Right now, hunters from the association are headed your way. These hunters will not give up on you guys. That is why you need to stay calm and rational, okay? Can you hear me? Really? In that case, Sob, can I survive? The voice coming from the other side of the line was gradually recovering from the panic state. That was a good sign. The employee thought that he succeeded in calming the female student down, and then asked the question that could prove to be most important in saving the girl's life. By any chance, those monsters? Do you know what kind of monsters those are? Yes, I know. I saw them on TV. Which monsters are they? If the monsters possessed weak senses and chased after humans using their eyes, then hiding in a bathroom would work as a suitable solution for the time being. The employee prayed that such monsters had invaded the school instead. They have human bodies, but they have ugly faces. And their skin is green. Can it be? The eyes of the employee grew wider and wider. Orcs? Are they orcs? Yes, I think it was what they were called. Orcs? And no, this can't be. The employee shot up from his seat before he realized it and cried out, "You need to run away from there. Hurry, orcs can." It was then, despite the employee's earnest prayer, he could hear the sound of the bathroom door being destroyed, followed soon by a sorrowful scream. The night orders raid was trucking along quite smoothly. As a matter of fact, things were working out so well that the hunters felt the whole thing was strangely too easy. For instance, they encountered yet another monster, but a rotting creature the size of a house tried to escape from the assault team, only to get ensnared by the restriction magic spell cast by the mage-type hunter, and soon it too met with a grisly end. And when the exact same thing repeated itself over and over again, the hunters were getting progressively more puzzled. Isn't this weird? Why are these monsters running away when they see us? Isn't it like they were being chased away? What's the matter, Seong Hunter Nim? Is something following us? Jin-Woo didn't answer her. As a matter of fact, his heart was beating so madly that he didn't even have any leeway to answer her questions. Could it be? Jin-Woo's eyes, as they stared towards the outside of this dungeon, began quaking violently. Only then did Jeong Yi-rim also realize that something was wrong as well. Heartbreaking screams rose up from all corners of the school. Less than half of the students managed to escape from the school alive. As for the rest, either they had all ended up as corpses, or were busy running around inside the school's premise trying to evade the orcs. Unfortunately, their futile resistance could only buy them a brief respite. The hunts of the orcs that started from the lowest floor continued on to higher floors and drove all victims caught in their wake to gruesome deaths. The students who couldn't run away in time and remained trapped in their classrooms could only cover their ears as more screams rose up from the lower floors. The classrooms for the third-year students were located on the top floor of the school building. Jin-Ah was also among those third-year students who couldn't run away in time. The doorway shoddily blocked up with junk was the only thing that could defend them against the marauding orc horde. FCKME. The male students grabbed onto chairs and mops or whatever that could serve as weapons with their trembling hands. But none of them helped to instill a sense of confidence in the scared students. No, all they could do was to wait and pray fervently for the hunters to show up before those orcs stepped foot inside their classroom. The bent classroom door was flung away. As the screams of the frightened students resounded out, two orcs covered in the blood of the countless number of people they had murdered stepped into the classroom. A male student holding a mop near the door threw away his makeshift weapon and ran to the back entrance, before yanking it open. However, another orc was lying in wait there, and it slammed an axe down on the forehead of this fleeing male student. The male student fell powerlessly, the light of life leaving his eyes. Both entrances of the classroom were now blocked off by the orcs. The remaining students screamed out loudly and crowded against the windows, but they all knew that the results would largely end up the same regardless of whether they chose to jump out from a 6-story window or get caught by the orcs. Appa, finding herself stuck in the middle of the students fleeing towards the corners of the classroom as they tried to get away from the orcs, Jin-Ah squeezed her eyes shut and called out to Jin-Woo, her Appa, the rank S hunter. If she called out to him, it felt as if he'd show up here right away. "Boss, there is a human with magic energy coming off. Kill that one first." Unlike regular humans, those that knew how to wield magic energy were dangerous opponents. Therefore, these orcs had to deal with a threat like that first. The orc, having received the boss's order, began scanning the students before eventually locking onto Jin-Ah's location. The orc grabbed her wrist and dragged her out to the middle of the classroom. "Is this female the one?" "It is, boss." The underling was right. Although faint, they could sense magic energy coming from somewhere on this girl. Whether that came from this female's abilities or some sort of a weapon she possessed, it didn't change the fact that she had to be eliminated first before everyone else. The boss raised its axe up. Jin-Ah saw the axe rising up high above her head and eventually squeezed her eyes shut. The boss twitched its nose and swung the axe down with a disinterested face. But then this happened. A veil of black smoke suddenly exploded out from Jin-Ah's shadow and took on a solid shape. Grab. The brows of the advanced scout's boss shot up high in surprise, because it just realized that a high orc wearing black armor suddenly appeared out of nowhere to grab onto its wrist. That was why. Before the puzzled orc could say something, the high orc threw a simple punch and shattered the head of the monster like an exploding watermelon. The jaws of the students watching this sight fell to the floor. They were about to avert their gazes before the scene of their classmate getting murdered played out. Yet these soldiers decked out in black armor suddenly appeared without a single warning. Soldiers? No, hold on. Was it even okay to call those things soldiers? But these monsters looked more orcish than orcs themselves, and were at least double the size of an orc and featured red skin. Really, when standing before the black-armored orc, that scary-looking orc now resembled a boy about to enter his teenage years instead. But that was to be expected. The shadow soldiers Jin-Woo had left behind in Jin-Ah's shadow were the high orcs serving as the guards of the boss monster Fangs from the high-ranking dungeon. Not only that, these guys were the cream of the warrior crop found there. Regular orcs dared to have a go against high orc warriors. What a funny notion that was. The students were freaking out properly now. Yuck. The terrifying monsters threatening their lives up until only a few seconds ago were getting massacred by even more monsterish monsters now. Their current level of shock and fear had gone far past what they could tolerate, and caused the inside of these students' heads to completely blank out. Except for one person, that was. Only Jin-Ah knew the significance of those black armors and began crying softly. Appa, did Appa. Jin-Ah could sense her Appa's trace from these three high orcs surrounding her like a trio of bodyguards. Did those monsters save us? Are we being protected? At the bare minimum, they felt sure of these black-armored orcs weren't going to harm them. Where is Appa? Is he here? Jin-Ah tearfully asked for Jin-Woo, but the high orc soldiers didn't reply back to her. Appa, instead, they lightly stopped her when she tried to go somewhere else. When Jin-Ah cautiously looked up at the high orc, the creature silently shook its head. The top priority for these high orcs was to secure Jin-Ah's safety. They couldn't let her roam around the building when it was packed full of enemies right now. And, sure enough, footsteps climbing up the stairs could be heard coming from outside the classroom. The attitude of Hunter Seong Jin-Woo, who was practically a paragon of relaxation up until a few seconds ago, suddenly did a complete 180. Something urgent came up and I must leave now. Park Jong-soo's complexion darkened. Without your presence, Seong Hunter Nim, we could find ourselves in great danger. You know this too, don't you? Park Jong-soo did his best to dissuade Jin-Woo in the most roundabout way he could think of. He was acutely aware that agitating Jin-Woo was far more dangerous than attempting to clear this dungeon without the young rank S hunter's help. That was how badly contorted Jin-Woo's current expression was. Let me call on a friend that you can place your trust in, as much as you'd trust me. From here on, that friend will take care of everything. Park Jong-soo's ears perked up. Not just anyone, but another hunter whose ability was guaranteed by none other than Hunter Seong Jin-Woo himself. Who could it be? Choi Jong-in? Or is it Cha Hee-in? Now that Park Jong-soo thought about it, didn't he see a document containing Hunter Cha Hee-in's profile in Jin-Woo's office yesterday? If it's Cha Hunter Nim, then yeah, she'll be more than enough. Although it was regretful that he couldn't stop Jin-Woo from leaving, but still, Park Jong-soo's expression got brighter at the prospect of the potential replacement. Jin-Woo didn't waste time hesitating and summoned forth the most powerful soldier in his shadow army. Baru, the king of ants, its body shrouded in black mist, answered its master's call. Baru didn't bother to mask its overwhelmingly evil magic energy, and that freaked the hunters out so much that they had to retreat far away immediately. That absolutely horrendous amount of magic energy, and the exact same outer appearance as that thing. See, could that be? And no, but how come? These hunters immediately recognized the identity of Baru. Without a doubt, this was the very same mutated ant monster that toyed around with the Korean rank S hunters back inside Jeju Island's ant tunnel. With these high-ranked hunters recognizing Baru, it became more convenient for him now since he didn't need to explain himself any further. The whole of the country witnessed Baru's power, after all. From here onwards, this guy will sub for me. He ignored the panicking Park Young-soo and gave a new order to Baru. Protect these humans. I shall follow. Baru made a short reply and raised its head. In that case, oh my king. What should I do about the existences besides these humans? Jin-Woo shifted his gaze over to the deepest part of the dungeon for a second or two, before issuing one more order to Baru. Do whatever you wish. It was right then. Baru's repressed desire to kill morphed into an unbridled joy and spread all over its body. Baru stood back up and screeched out loudly, the entire cavern reverberating from that horrifying sound. Hunters began trembling from that screech, even though it wasn't even directed at them. Wait. We need to finish the raid with that thing. Cold perspiration trickled down Park Jong-soo's back. Jin-Woo didn't even pay any mind to the reactions of the hunters and simply summoned 20 more ant shadow beast soldiers to aid Baru's cause. Having breathed in the fresh outside air for the first time in a long while, the beast soldiers began screeching out loudly as well. And quite obviously, every hunter bearing witness to this spectacle froze up where they stood. Hold on. Jiang Yi-rim quickly turned around and called out to Jin-Woo. Are you going to leave just like that? After letting loose this monster's here. If you want, I'll simply undo the summoning. But when that happens, Jiang Yi-rim flinched when Jin-Woo's cold glare landed on her. I'll no longer care about what happens to the Night Order Guild. Jin-Woo made a promise, and that was, he'd protect the members of the Night Order Guild and ensure that they wouldn't get harmed. However, if the other side declined his act of goodwill first, then he didn't see the need to stay responsible for these people, either. Jin-Woo's unyielding declaration shut up the mouths of not just Jiang Yi-rim, but the rest of the Night Order's hunters, as well. As his distance from the raid team grew, Jin-Woo summoned up his skills window to confirm. Class specific, remaining before the skill can be used again. A minute. Jin-Woo bit his lower lip. He needed to wait over an hour if he were to use the Shadow Exchange skill. The signals from his soldiers were still coming in, even right now. He was getting a really bad premonition here. I can't wait for another hour. He needed to exit from this dungeon first. Making up his mind thus, Jin-Woo took another step. But then, undead monsters that were supposed to be finished off after the assault team went past here began raising their bodies up again. Jin-Woo's eyes burned brilliantly from rage. He was enraged by these worthless monsters trying to block his path. When that happened, like a lie, the undead monsters all knelt down towards Jin-Woo. Flop, flop. There was not one exception here. Every single revived undead monster was prostrating before Jin-Woo now. But why? Jin-Woo tilted his head. Could the reason for every monster encountered by the assault team being so terrified be all because of him? Is it because I possess a higher ranked class than a necromancer capable of controlling the undead? The current situation was puzzling, but he didn't have enough time to think about this too deeply. He stored the short sword back in his inventory and ran with all his might to exit from the gate. The attention of the people waiting outside the gate focused on him in an instant. Why did only Hunter Seong Jin-Woo get out of the gate? They sent their curiosity-filled gazes in his direction. But Jin-Woo ignored them all. Kaizel. Suddenly, a sky dragon covered in black mist revealed itself. The spectators immediately recognized the sky dragon, which had appeared in the news a couple of times before, and they began crying out while pointing to Jin-Woo. To where my little sister is, at your fastest speed. If something tried to block his way, he'd smash past them regardless of what they were. Kaizel roared out in happiness, knowing that now it could flap its wings without any restrictions whatsoever. Kiok. Right away, Kaizel unfurled its massive wings and took to the sky. The last restriction was finally undone. Finally gaining the freedom of movement, the owner of the dungeon left the boss chamber and strode outside the gate. It was the chieftain of the orcs, Guruktaru. Its entire body was covered in black tattoos, seemingly not leaving behind even a single patch of empty skin. Tattoos signified victory to orcs. These were proof of how many battles this creature fought and how many enemies it had slain so far. Guruktaru, Guruktaru. The orcs waiting for the chieftain in front of the gate chanted out its name and lowered their heads. High orc warriors are aiding humans. High orcs. Indeed, high orc warriors were strong. Regular orc warriors wouldn't be able to fight against them. Meaning, it was now time for the chieftain to step up. How many? 3. Even if their opponents were strong. What a shameful notion it was for dozens of great orc warriors to fail at subduing only 3 high orcs. Pathetic. Guruktaru's expression crumpled. The orcs were scared stiff from the chieftain's anger and began trembling like leaves. Lights of madness were burning furiously within Gyuriktaru's eyes. Insolent beastards. It was now time to demand appropriate compensation from the high orcs, who dare to interrupt the hunting of the orc warriors. Suddenly finding himself left behind along with ant monsters, Park Jong-soo was feeling rather dumbstruck at the moment. Hyung-nim, leave me for a bit, okay? I need time to think. Being surrounded by over 20 of these monsters, no summons, Park Jong-soo was getting this close to abandoning this raid altogether. Okay, so, let's say that we give up on this raid. If so, then how should he explain the result of this raid to the reporters waiting outside? Could he say, Hunter Seong Jin-Woo had to suddenly leave the assault team and therefore they couldn't afford to advance forward anymore? Or, they had to give up on the raid because they got too scared of the new friends Hunter Seong Jin-Woo summoned here for them? What kind of an embarrassment would that be? Didn't matter which excuse was used, it had become a source of ridicule for them, probably for forever. Park Jong-soo clenched his teeth. Fine, we go forward. Did it really matter if they were scared of these summons? At the end of the day, weren't they Hunter Seong Jin-Woo's slaves? When Park Jong-soo thought about this, his mind calmed down just a tad. I mean, seriously, these guys are Seong Hunter Nim's summoned creatures, so they won't do anything weird to us, right? Park Jong-soo's confidence-filled eyes shifted over to Baru, and the latter approached the hunter after sensing his gaze. Yuck. The confidence of a few seconds ago evaporated real fast, and Park Jong-soo could barely squeeze out a trembling voice. Well, let's get going. Rather naturally, he began speaking in a super polite tone. However, Baru showed no reaction even after hearing Park Jong-soo's voice. No, it just stood there and simply stared back, wondering if his manner of speech was still not good enough for this creature's whims. Park Jong-soo became even more polite in his tone. Should we get going now? Even then, Baru showed no sign of budging from the spot. Park Jong-soo's consciousness was gradually getting fainter as he had to stare longer and longer into the powerful glare of the creature in front of him. Could it be that this guy can't understand what I'm saying here, and that's why it's not moving? When Park Jong-soo's thoughts reached this point, he forced his facial muscle to contort into an ungainly smile, and then he pointed towards the interior of the dungeon. In front, forward. In that moment, the mutated ant monster disappeared instantly, along with the sound of a bullet leaving the silenced gun. Where did it go? Even before Park Jong-soo could scan his vicinity with puzzled eyes, Baru returned to his original position. Baru then pushed forward something held in his hand towards Park Jong-soo's face. What the heck? When the flustered hunter took a closer look, he realized that the mystery object was actually the head of a monster. Not only that, it was the helmet of one of the most powerful undead monsters, Death Knight, with a rotting head still trapped inside. Park Jong-soo freaked out and plopped down his butt real hard. The other members of the assault team also were jolted into stunned silence and hurriedly gathered around Park Jong-soo. Baru disinterestedly scanned the hunters now grouped together in one spot. He loudly screeched out to the rest of the ant monsters. With that, the ant army began to march forward in perfect order. Baru looked down at Park Jong-soo still on the ground for a little while, before he slowly turned around and followed after the marching ants. The hunters hurriedly checked out Park Jong-soo's current condition. Hyung-nim, Chairman, are you all right? Are you okay? Park Jong-soo replied to them with a stupefied face. I'm okay. His body was fine, but, for some reason, his heart ached instead. It felt as if he got ridiculed by a summoned creature. There's no way that's true, surely not. Indeed, a summoned creature couldn't have possessed such a level of intelligence. Whatever the case may be, though, he couldn't give up on this raid now that he even got humiliated somewhat like this. Park Jong-soo dusted off his butt and got back up. Let's go, as well. The expressions of the hunters stiffened up. Hey, you want to follow after those things? How can we go on a raid with monsters? The high orc warriors were indeed strong. Unfortunately, they were still no match for the orc chieftain, Gyuriktaru. The orc's leader left behind its guards in the corridor and stepped forward to fight all by itself. And then, while easily evading the attacks of the high orcs, pulled out a scimitar sheathed on its back. Is this all you have? The interior of the classroom was filled with the corpses of the orcs. Even at a casual count, there were 50 of them here. Make me enjoy this more, warriors of the high orc race. The chieftain's rage was transferred directly into merciless swings of its curved blade. Gyuriktaru's scimitar drew elaborate arcs in the air, and began shaving away the high orcs, their armors and all. The screams didn't come from the high orcs, naturally, but from the mouths of the humans hiding behind them. Gyuriktaru's forehead creased up in displeasure. Annoyingly noisy. After taking care of these high orcs, those bugs would be next. Gyuriktaru sliced off an arm of a high orc and chopped it up in fine pieces until it got eventually bored of doing that, and spun on its heels to cut off the opponent's neck clean off. When that happened, other orcs who had retreated outside the classroom because of the high orcs all began raising loud cheers. Gyuriktaru, Gyuriktaru. It was then Gyuriktaru's brows quivered. The headless high orc morphed to black smoke before reverting back to how it was originally, right in front of its eyes. Is this shamanism? Even after the orc chieftain cut and sliced its enemies several more times, the story remained the same. Gyuriktaru eventually became really frustrated and roared out. It had sliced and hacked these high orcs numerous times to death, yet they all reverted back to their original shapes again and again. It won't be hard killing them hundreds, thousands times. However, there would be no end in sight if that happened. Even right now, that DMN voice in its head was repeatedly ordering Gyuriktaru to kill humans. As a matter of fact, the orc was beginning to suffer from a migraine as the voice continuously rang inside its head. But that didn't mean it could ignore these high orcs and try to kill the humans, either. Time to finish this. Gyuriktaru rolled its brain into gear. If these high orcs were creations from some kind of sorcery, then without a doubt, there must be a shaman controlling them somewhere. Gyuriktaru had fought against many different kinds of sorcery in the past battles, and therefore, it subsequently knew how to end this dirty trick once and for all, as well. That female, that human female, standing far behind these high orcs and holding her breath. Although faint, she was somehow connected to these high orcs. Gyuriktaru's eyes gleamed dangerously. So, is it you? The monster's target for its murderous rage was redirected to her. The moment Jin-Woo met Gyuriktaru's gaze, her entire body shuddered uncontrollably. That human female definitely knew something. Gyuriktaru decided as so, and pointed at Jin-Woo while glancing behind itself. Kill that human female. Even before its words were finished, the guards observing the fight from the back rushed forward to carry out Gyuriktaru's order. Then, the high orcs ignored Gyuriktaru in front of them to desperately block against the advancing guards. I thought as much. Indeed, the orc chieftain's guess was correct. By seizing the opening created from the high orcs being held up, Gyuriktaru stood before Jin-Woo. So, it was you. The orc used the hand not holding the scimitar and grabbed Jin-Woo's neck, before lifting her up. The female, with her airways squeezed tight, couldn't even scream properly. This caused Gyuriktaru to tilt its head. It was such a weak, slender neck that it'd get broken just from the monster squeezing a little harder than usual. But how could such a weak human manage to complete a high-class sorcery that changed warriors into immortals? There was a simple way to find out. Kill her and I'll see. And, just as Gyuriktaru began squeezing the female's neck to snap it in half, from afar, the cry of a sky dragon resounded out. Right away, Gyuriktaru felt every hair on its body stand up. What is this? As time slowed down from the extreme tension it felt, the orc chieftain's instincts of a warrior, trained to their very limit, sent out countless warning bells. Gyuriktaru quickly discarded the human female, and with the movements akin to a wild animal, fled to the door of the classroom. Boom. A mighty, ear-splitting explosion occurred next, the shards of glass flying out like shrapnel. Meanwhile, orcs manning the doorways began hastily retreating away after the back of their chieftain suddenly appeared in front of their eyes. Gyuriktaru wordlessly glared forward, its breathing now becoming extremely cautious. It was picking up on an unusual and eerie vibe. It could see a human male it hadn't seen before standing on the spot where the human female was just now. Gyuriktaru shifted its gaze ever so slightly to the side. Its opposite corner was where the windows were. Nothing remained of the entirety of that wall as if it had been struck by a powerful siege weapon. Even with its excellent dynamic visual acuity, the orc chieftain still failed to follow that man's movements. Gyuriktaru could only swallow its saliva at the sudden entrance of a powerful opponent. The new enemy completely ignored the presence of the orc chieftain and its underlings, and simply proceeded to confirm the human female's condition. Gyuriktaru spoke to its enemy. I am Gyuriktaru, from the proud tribe of Red Blade. That was the warrior's introduction only granted to an opponent capable of reaping away the orc's life. Having completed its introduction, Gyuriktaru asked the human male, "And who are you?" Jin-Woo raised his head and quietly spoke. "Shut your mouth and quietly wait for your turn over there." A human just used the language of the orcs. The orcs' surprise lasted only for a moment. Perhaps it was because of the power carried in that man's voice. None of the orcs, which included Gyuriktaru itself, could even dare to budge an inch from the spot. Jin-Woo asked, his expression hard and unforgiving. "Are you all right, Appa?" Jin-Woo finally stopped coughing and jumped into his embrace, tears streaming from her eyes. Jin-Woo gently stroked her hair as if he was soothing a scared child. Appa, Jin-Ah's Appa. That means, the students finally realized who the man in front of their eyes was. He was Jin-Woo, a hunter ranked S. We're saved. He very cautiously separated his sister from him as she tried hard not to leave his side. He then called out his shadow soldiers matching the exact number of the surviving students. Everyone, follow my summons out of the building. The students nodded their heads, and the soldiers proceeded to pick them up in an embrace. As for Jin-Ah, he entrusted her especially to Ygritte. Please wait for me downstairs, okay? I'm going to join you very soon after dealing with this. Normally, Jin-Ah would try to stop her Appa, telling him that they should go together regardless of whether he was a rank S hunter or not. No, she'd still say that even if he was something greater. But now, she couldn't do that, because Jin-Woo's current expression was far too scary for her to say those words. So, Jin-Ah could only nod her head. Jin-Woo gave out his signal, and the soldiers carrying the students jumped outside of the destroyed wall one by one. Orcs in the corridor flinched slightly at the sight of the almost caught prey making their escape. When that happened, Jin-Woo glared at them with his ice-cold eyes. I told you not to move. Like some kind of a lie, all orcs stopped moving altogether. None of them could go against his glare. After confirming that all of the students had left the classroom safely, Jin-Woo turned around to face the orcs. He didn't let them leave because he was worried about them getting injured. These measly orcs. He was confident of killing them all in the blink of an eye. He simply didn't want to show his little sister or other kids what was about to happen in here, that was all. And now, there were no more eyes watching. Gyuriktaru asked him again, who are you? How can you speak our tongue? Jin-Woo ignored the orc's words and slowly made his way over to them. Realizing that the human male had no intentions to answer back, Gyuriktaru bared its fangs and shouted out, attack! The brave orc warriors pounced on Jin-Woo all at once after hearing the chieftain's order. When they did, the time froze. Within this freeze frame of a moment, Jin-Woo leisurely walked in between the orcs that were moving agonizingly slowly, and proceeded to destroy them one by one. He didn't even need to take his weapons out. He only needed to use his finger. Every time Jin-Woo's finger brushed by an orc, heads, shoulders, wrists, waists, and midriffs of the monsters exploded into bits. And after utterly destroying over 20 orcs in one blink of an eye, Jin-Woo stood before Gyuriktaru. Jin-Woo's left hand grabbed Gyuriktaru's mouth and jaw, and the orc could only whimper pathetically. Jin-Woo walked forward just like that and slammed the orc's head against the corridor's wall. The empty corridor reverberated with the thunderous boom. Jin-Woo's gaze shifted towards either end of the corridor. It was filled with the remains of the students. It was truly a hard-to-look gruesome sight to behold. However, Jin-Woo didn't avert his gaze and imprinted the sight of every single one of these kids in his mind, just so he could demand reparations from the guilty one responsible. Jin-Woo shifted his eyes to Gyuriktaru. Why? His voice was incomparably icy. Why does your kind want to kill humans to this extreme level? Gyuriktaru had long lost its desire to resist and could only tremble in fear as it replied. In our heads, telling us to kill humans. Jin-Woo became momentarily confused. Kill humans. He had heard of the exact same thing before. But, back then, he interpreted the word humans as another term for hunters. But it seemed that the word human really did mean all humans, now that he got to hear this monster's reply. Then, what about me? Jin-Woo asked the orc again. Do you not hear the voice telling you to kill me? He brought his face closer. It was inevitable that Gyuriktaru would look into Jin-Woo's eyes. The orc began shaking its head and shivered hard as if it had discovered something in there. Forgive me. Something impossible happened. The brave and mighty great warrior of the orc race began shedding tears like a little child. Jin-Woo felt the inside of his head suddenly cool off as he watched the terrified monster cowering before him. So, that's how it is. He was not being seen as a human even in this guy's head, was that it? Well, it doesn't really matter. Jin-Woo wasn't all that interested in how monsters viewed him. No, he simply killed them because they were out to harm humans. Gyuriktaru shivered and continued sob as the fear it couldn't overcome completely enveloped it. Please, forgive. Jin-Woo replied. I'll forgive you. And then, he summoned the Demon King's short sword. However, do not think that the process will be a painless one for you. The Night Order Guild's assault team could only gasp out in astonishment while spectating on the battles of the monsters. How could it be? How could anyone call this a raid now? Because the ants very easily subdued the undead monsters and then began greedily devouring them. If they eat up everything like that, nothing will be left behind, you know. Right? Even the magic crystals. The hunters could only anxiously look on as the top-class magic crystals all ended up in the stomachs of these monsters. No, summoned creatures. Unable to watch from the sidelines any longer, Jeong Yi-rim hastily ran out. Don't you know how expensive that is? She tried to wrestle away the corpse of a vampire, but that only managed to annoy the ant, and the creature swung its arm at her direction. She cried out and tumbled backwards after the ant's claw cut into her forearm, just as she tried to get up while rubbing her butt. By the time she regained her wits, the ant monster that swung its arm was standing before her. The creature had its gigantic maw and its horrifying mandibles wide open as if to swallow her head whole. Jiang Yirim's expression froze stiff at that moment. It was then Baru had come swooping in and turned that ant around. He opened his own maw wide just like how this ant did a moment ago, and then he screeched out incredibly loudly, being subjected to the rage of an existence on another level. The ant creature couldn't even meet Baru's gaze and simply shivered in fear. Baru let go of the ant's shoulder, causing the creature to hurriedly scurry away from there. Jiang Yirim watched this scene play out in a total daze, but Baru approached her and extended his hand out. Still stupefied over everything, she grabbed the offered hand and was able to finally stand back up. She was about to say something, only for her lips to stop, because she saw the gentle blue light circulating around Baru's fingertips. That was why. Healing magic. Jiang Yirim's brows shot up real high in surprise. The wound in her arm healed up immediately the moment that blue light touched her. After confirming that her wound was completely cured, Baru turned towards the ants and shouted out. That caused the ants to end their mealtime and began moving deeper into the dungeon's interior. Jiang Yirim watched the back of Baru and murmured to herself, "How can a summon cast better healing magic than me?" Because of the nature of the incident itself, a massive crowd of people had rushed towards the school's perimeters. "My son goes to this school. Get out of the way. I need to confirm what happened with my own eyes." If it weren't for the desperate crowd control efforts by the police and the association's employees, the scene of the incident would have descended into pure pandemonium from the maddened crowd. The reporters had also rushed here as soon as word got out and were now busy snapping away with their cameras. In a way, you could say that today's tragedy has been foretold in advance. His expression was hard. On the other hand, Jin-Woo was feeling confused. Does that mean the association didn't do anything about an incident they could have prevented in advance? Before his confusion had the chance to transform into anger, the association president pulled out his phone and showed Jin-Woo its display. It showed a graphical chart. This shows the increase in the gate activity around the city of Seoul for the last 6 months. The dots drew a gentle curvature, but when it got nearer to present, it suddenly spiked up steeply. And this side shows the stats from around the world. If the association president didn't make that clear, Jin-Woo might have mistaken them for two of the exact same thing. That was how similar looking the inclines in those two graphs were. The numbers of gates appearing has spiked up noticeably throughout the world. Go-Gun Huey's complexion got darker and darker. However, that isn't the only strange thing. He returned the phone back into his inner jacket pocket and carried on. People wanting to confirm their awakened rankings are practically lining up in a long queue outside the association every day now. The number of gates where monsters come out was increasing, and at the same time, the number of hunters who were supposed to block the gates was also increasing. As if to maintain a balance, anyone could tell something big was afoot from that data. Unfortunately, that didn't mean Jin-Woo could do anything about them right now. It was the same story for Go-Gun Huey as well. Also, a simple phone call would have sufficed if it was about sharing of information and a hypothesis. Jin-Woo thought that association president wouldn't have taken time out of his packed schedule to simply have this conversation. In that case, what you wished to talk to me about was. As if he was waiting for that, Go-Gun Huey picked up a briefcase resting by the footwell and pulled out various documents from there. Japan, the States, China, Russia, France, Britain, Germany, and even from the Middle East. All the nations with some international clout were brought up abruptly. These are all the official documents sent in from those nations that wish to make contact with you, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim. I'm fairly certain that some of them even have made unofficial contacts with you already. Jin-Woo briefly recalled the incident involving the American Hunter Bureau's people, but decided not to mention it. In all honesty, we at the Hunters Association simply don't have any rights to stop these people. No, we can only protect your personal information according to your requests. Jin-Woo silently listened to the older man's story. I know that everything depends on your decision, Seong Jin-Woo Hunter Nim, but I fear that our country will not be able to adapt to the incoming changes if you decide to leave us. Rather than a concrete answer, Jin-Woo shifted his gaze out of the car's window. As he fell deeper into a myriad of distracting thoughts, one of the biggest hospitals in the country entered his view. It was the very hospital where Jin-Ah had been admitted to. We will provide you with every convenience we can possibly provide. Go-Gun Huey stuffed the documents back inside the briefcase and asked Jin-Woo with a tense expression. So, would you please remain in South Korea? The Night Order's assault team chased after the ants and arrived at the boss chamber's entrance. The hunters at the back of the pack suddenly became rather noisy. "Chairman, there are a lot of things coming from our rear." "Yeah, I can hear them coming, too. Everyone, enter the boss room, now." Their sole hope for survival was the summoned creatures left behind by Hunter Seong Jin-Woo. After confirming that every last hunter had entered, Park Jong-soo shouted out, veins popping up in his throat, "Block the exit." Jeong-yi-rim activated her skill, Holy Wall, and blocked up the entryway connecting the boss room and the passageway before it. The Death Knight standing in front of the rushing horde noisily pounded on the invisible barrier. Her forehead soaked in cold sweat now, Jeong-yi-rim turned her head towards Park Jong-soo. "Chairman, I won't be able to hold this for more than 5 minutes, tops." I know. Not only Park Jong-soo, but the rest of the assault team members had finished preparing for a battle in case the wall was breached. "Oh, my dear lord." His eyes opened even wider than before. The boss monster currently standing in a face-off against the ants was something even Park Jong-soo knew of, after hearing about it many times in the past. A pale-faced mage wearing a tattered robe, the Archlick. It was the strongest undead-type monster, thought to be the creature at the top of the undead food chain. Why did it have to be a DMN Archlick? Park Jong-soo's complexion darkened considerably. He prayed for the summoned creatures to quickly kill the boss and help them out, but then, the opponent turned out to be a DMN Archlick. It'd be more realistic for the hunters to get rid of the scores of undead first and help the summoned creatures out next. It was then, Baru took a step forward towards the Archlick. The Archlick then immediately summoned over a dozen Death Knights around the ants and surrounded them. Baru bared his fangs and extended its claws out. The Archlick recognized the black smoke continuously rising up from Baru's entire body. It was almost as if the completely empty eye sockets had widened for a second there. The Shadow Army. The language of the monsters came out from the Archlick's mouth. Baru retracted his claws after hearing the boss's words. The Archlick swept its gaze around the ants behind Baru and asked in a puzzled voice, "Why is the king's personal army attacking us?" "Kekek." Baru leaked out a sound that sounded like a cackle of ridicule, before pointing to himself. "We have been chosen by the king." And then, he pointed at the Archlick. "And you weren't." The Archlick couldn't believe it, its voice now containing a trace of anger. "That can't be. I shall personally report to the king and..." Unfortunately, even before the Archlick could finish its sentence, Baru appeared right before its stunned eyes. The shoulders of the Archlick quivered momentarily. Baru was a high-class monster that the owner of a rank S dungeon sacrificed its own life force to create. Even if its overall stats had fallen a little ever since becoming a shadow soldier, there was just no way that an owner of a measly rank A dungeon, an Archlick, could fight against Baru. The former Ant King simply thrust its hand into the shocked boss's chest without hesitation. The hand pierced through the chest, along with the pendant hanging on the Archlick's neck. Baru's hand exiting from the back of the Archlick was grasping the pendant now. That piece of jewelry was basically the heart of the Archlick. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.